Good numbing, and welcome back to what's essentially the final step of our Danganronpa revisit. The last little thing I wanted to cover, and it's something I didn't cover on my blind playthrough, but did read in my spare time and really enjoy it. It's entirely a visual novel. It's Danganronpa if, as in what if, Mukuro survived in the first game. So there is some context. Like it says, it's going to make reference to Dangan Zero. But even as someone who's like never read Dangan Zero, I got it enough. I know when there's something that's mentioned as Zero, and if that happens, I'll bring it up. But it's literally what it is. It's a what-if scenario story. It's not canon, tragically. And I say tragically because Mukuro is a phenomenal character. But if you need recapping, it's going to involve the whole first game's cast. So that is Makoto, that is Taka, Byakuya, Mondo, Leon, Hifumi, Yasuhiro, Sayaka, Kyoko, Hina, Toko, Sakura, Celestia Ludenberg, Junko Enoshima, which, spoilers, main villain, Chihiro, and Mukuro, disguised as Junko, but it's actually the ultimate soldier. So keep that in mind as we dive in. And the reason why a lot of people say this is the better interpretation is because Mukuro is very different in this compared to how she is in the anime. In the anime, she's kind of just not a good character. She's just kind of not well written. She's kind of just a gimmick for a joke for a lot of the time. Whilst in this, they actually get to see all the sides of what makes her her. But enough dilly-dallying, let's hop right in. Remember to like and subscribe as always, it genuinely really helps this channel grow. I know this stream's going to be a little bit of a weird one, which is going to be a bit of a double dip. We won't be streaming Caligula Effect as long as in like usual after this, but we will be streaming that afterwards depending on how long this takes. If this ends up taking longer than I remember it being, then we'll figure that out when we get to it. But that being said, let's dive in. Monokuma's monologue.
The world is full of ifs. If Adam hadn't tied the knots with Eve, society as we know it would never have been born. The world that everyone lives in is just one outcome among countless ifs, and will continue to be a muddled world overflowing with infinite ifs. If is what's in miso soup. You know? What lies beyond this point is a scary world filled with iffy stepfathers who abandon their families. A clean bottle where the inside and outside are filled with uncertainty. But don't break it, okay? It'd be so expensive that there's no way you'd ever be able to pay me back. Ahem. But no matter how you look at it, ifs are simply worlds like any other. No matter how hypothetical the story may be, the future is the only thing that's truly foggy. And the past is more solid than a frozen banana. You can't change a conclusion that has already happened. Even if you see a world that may have existed, it wouldn't affect the people living in reality. Because if is only if, after all. Even if a parallel world exists where a particular if actually happened, humans cannot cross the boundaries between worlds that easily. No matter how far if goes, it will always be a what-if scenario. Do you really want to see that? You've got some sick interests. Don't you think that's an insult to Makoto and the others after the tragedy they overcame? Though, as far as I am concerned, I'll still insult them. If you're gonna look at if, I think it's better if you view the outside of the clean bottle first. It might even be better if you view the ending of a video game called Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Try to play it multiple times, and spend your free time with Junko Enoshima at least 3 times too. It may be ideal if you can collect all the items and movies too. But if you guys have come this far, I'm sure you've already done all that. Still, I'd buy the game if I were you. I'd actually buy at least 2 copies if I were you. The curtain lowers.
Trigger Happy Havoc, Danganronpa if. What should I do with this? Because Naege was at a loss. Despite his hesitation, his situation was extremely simple and composed of 3 key factors. The first factor was that Makoto is currently locked inside a school. Hope's Peak Academy is a school of the privileged elite, and each student attending possesses ultimate talent. Makoto was chosen to attend Hope's Peak Academy by a lottery held to select the ultimate lucky student. When he arrived for his first day of school, he immediately lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he saw all the exits and windows had been sealed shut. The next factor was Monokuma, a mysterious robot bear being operated by the mastermind, and the announcement he made to all the students.
"You'll be living your whole life in this academy," he declared. "If you want to leave, then kill someone and become the Blackened."
The strange, remote-controlled robot was telling Makoto and his fellow Ultimates to start killing each other in exchange for their freedom. They learned that more than one Monokuma exists, and that each one contains a bomb to prevent anyone from attacking them. On top of that, Monokuma announced that anyone who attempted to harm him would receive punishment. The third and final factor was the red button that Makoto is currently holding in his hand. The words escape button were crudely written on its button marker. And though the first two factors were certainly cause for panic, Makoto only seemed at a loss over the third. During his free time, Makoto noticed that the school store was open, and his curiosity got the better of him. He was overwhelmed by the disjointed atmosphere upon entering, but his attention soon focused on a strange vending machine. The words Mono machine were written on it, and it seemed to accept the strange bear-patterned coins that sometimes were found inside the school. It seemed like a bad idea, but Makoto thought there might be a chance that this machine could dispense some way of escaping the school. And so, he inserted the only coin he had into the coin slot, and the result was the escape button mentioned earlier. There's a limit to how much you can tease us. Maybe the mastermind who trapped us in here is making a cruel joke. These thoughts filled Makoto's mind, and he began to feel deeply discouraged. However, there's always a chance, right? Makoto was just an ordinary boy, and he only gained entry to Hope's Peak Academy through a lottery to find the ultimate lucky student. Maybe that luck was the real deal. If this button is real, maybe I can let Sayaka... Makoto took a deep, slow breath and pressed the button. Instantly, pain burst through his entire body. Ugh! Makoto's arms and legs went limp as he lost his balance and fell to the floor in a crumpled heap. As he breathed heavily, it dawned on him what had just happened. I got electrocuted? He looked down at the button in his hand and noticed a small needle sticking out of it. Makoto quickly surmised that the electric current must have been running through it. After regaining enough of his strength to stand back up, Makoto thought about it once again. I should have known it was a fake. Just how sick and twisted was the mastermind? My head still feels a little woozy. I should go back to my room and rest today. With that in mind, Makoto walked out of the school store with slow, careful steps. What Makoto didn't know yet, if the escape button really was a fake, it would have been an act of mercy from the mastermind. A small, bear-shaped shadow began moving around inside the now empty school store. The shadow, Monokuma, stood before the Mono machine and stared at it silently. But after some time had passed, he began to laugh, a cold, hollow laugh, utterly devoid of emotion. Despite the fact that he was alone, Monokuma began to talk, almost as if he was speaking to someone. Perhaps Monokuma was talking directly to the mastermind controlling him.
"I only put that in the Mono machine because I thought it'd be interesting if one of the last few survivors happened to win it. But with a success rate of 0.000000001%, I never thought anyone would actually win it. Perhaps I should have expected the ultimate lucky student to overcome such impossible odds."
Monokuma started blushing and breathing heavily for no apparent reason. A robot like Monokuma doesn't need to breathe, but because his technology is super advanced, he can express himself like a living creature.
"Makoto was chosen through a lottery, and now he's won the escape button through a lottery.
This is obviously impossible,
right? Is this what a miracle is? Is this all systems go towards escaping? If something that defies all common sense about to come crashing into my world? Well, even though I don't really want this at all, I'm starting to enjoy this new sensation. We'll be back after these commercials."
Monokuma's internal machinery began running at full capacity, and his facial expressions began changing more smoothly than any humans could. Suddenly, his expressions immediately stopped, and he whispered through the speakers.
But is this really good luck?
After mustering something so ominous, Monokuma's loud, screeching laughter rang jarringly throughout the room. The situation that was about to unfold contained two conflicting emotions in equal measure: hope and despair. The next day, nighttime, student dormitory, Mikoto's room. Mikoto Naege lay on his bed, desperately struggling with the despair and hope churning within him. Monokuma had forced the students to watch a DVD earlier that day. Mikoto's showed a scene that suggested his parents and little sister were in danger, and he now found himself determined to leave the school. It seemed the other students were forced to watch shocking videos of their own, videos so shocking that they were now determined to escape the school too, even if it meant sacrificing someone to do it. However, it was obvious that these videos were part of Monokuma's trap. As long as a student killed someone, they were allowed to graduate and leave the academy. It seemed that the mastermind controlling Monokuma was hell-bent on making the students kill each other. But right now, Mikoto was most worried about Sayaka and Maizono, who seemed to be incredibly distressed after watching her DVD. Sayaka wasn't just the ultimate pop sensation, she was also Mikoto's classmate when they were students at Blackroot Junior High. Her optimism had been encouraging Mikoto these past few days, and he was becoming a similar source of strength for her as well. If nothing else, I have to at least save Sayaka. As soon as Mikoto thought that, he suddenly felt a small headache. Huh? Was he still reeling from being punched by Mondo the other day, or was this a side effect of being electrocuted by the escape button? As Mikoto pondered these things, the pain slowly subsided, and he returned to his determined thoughts of escape. Anyway, we all need to work together and... Huh? At that moment, Mikoto realized his goal had changed slightly. We all need to. Ideally, it would be best if everyone survived together. However, aside from Sayaka, Mikoto had never met the other students before. He didn't know if they could even be trusted in the first place. But at that moment, he trusted them without even an ounce of suspicion. He believed they were worth helping, even at the cost of his own life. Just like Sayaka. Why? The headache struck again. As if all the blood vessels in his brain were being individually sliced open. Why did I just think that I could trust the others as much as I trust Sayaka? Because I tried to figure out why his thought process suddenly changed. Something was wrong. The throbbing pain in his head seemed to synchronize with a strange feeling that something was approaching him. As a ray of light began to form within the dark recesses of his own mind, the doorbell rang. Someone's here? He quickly got out of bed, but that only made the headache worse. With no concern for his safety, Mikoto carelessly opened the door to his room and came face to face with Sayaka. I'm really sorry to come by so late. Sayaka? The pain. What are you doing out so late? The moment he saw her face, the pulsating pain in Mikoto's head began accelerating. It felt like his world was getting torn apart from the inside out. Sorry to bother you, but something really weird happened and... Mikoto? What's wrong? You don't look so well. Sayaka was pale and had been trembling when she came to Mikoto's room, but she seemed surprised to see that his complexion was worse than her own. Yeah, I'm fine. It's just... my head. Mikoto couldn't finish his sentence. His eyes rolled back into his head, and he lost consciousness as he slowly fell to the floor. And Sayaka's beautiful voice let out a scream as she stood over Mikoto's body. The next day, at the nurse's office... Oh, you're awake. Hey, you okay? How many fingers am I holding up? As Mikoto regained consciousness, he was greeted by the sight of fingers adorned with long fake nails being waved in his face. Huh? You're Junko, right? Hey, why do you sound so unsure? I'm a little shocked to hear you say that. Despite what she said, Junko Enoshima, the ultimate fashionista, was laughing as she found this to be very amusing. Mikoto looked around and realized he'd never seen this place before. It looked somewhat like a hospital. 3 beds, including his own, were lined up in the room, with various medical instruments laid around them. The black ceiling felt strangely oppressive, but as he sat up, Mikoto's mind immediately centered on one possibility. Where are we? Did we get rescued? Oh, that'd be nice, she replied as she looked away. Junko explained that this was the nurse's office on the first floor of the academy. That Monokuma thing said, I can't bear to see my precious student getting sick, and opened this place up this morning. But don't you think it's suspicious? What if all these meds are poison? To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised. Mikoto remembered his encounter with the escape button and let out a small sigh. So, why am I here, Junko? You should thank Sayaka for that. She was here the whole night taking care of you. She was? Junko ignored Makoto's surprise and continued casually talking. But then Taka got all fired up and was like, we should take turns overwatching him. I just happened to be on duty when you woke up. Well, and even then, only because Byakuya had ditched. I see, thanks. Like I said, you should thank Sayaka. Anyway, how are you feeling? Is everything alright? Huh? Makoto thought about it for a moment, and remembered what he'd been thinking about just before he lost consciousness. It is kind of weird, but... Actually, it's a really weird question, but... What's up? Junko, we've never met each other before, right? Upon hearing this, Junko's eyes widened, but a few seconds later, she began to laugh. Huh? Oh, are you for real? Oh, that pickup line is, like, totally played out, you know. Even though she was grinning, a serious look came over her face. Just so you know, you shouldn't expect anything like that from me. I know I look this way, but I take my virtue pretty seriously. No, I mean, I never expected... Well, that's what I figured. It's obvious that you're a total omega male anyway. Makoto and Junko continued to talk to one another. Although he wondered why Junko was talking to him instead of leaving to get the others, Makoto didn't question it. He just wanted to talk to someone. Anyone. As long as he interacted with his fellow students, he believed he would learn the truth about what was going on inside his head. 10 minutes later, Junko mostly talked about alpha males and omega males, her time being homeless, and about her past and her dreams for the future. The last topic was a lot heavier than the previous ones, but Makoto's calm demeanor seemed to cheer her up. She smiled sincerely and said softly, "Thanks, Mikado." Maybe it was a sign of gratitude for listening to her troubles, but she kept that same smile as she blurted out something horrifying. "In return, I promise that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you." Don't say scary stuff like that. At least, that's what Makoto thought. But the words that came out of his mouth expressed a different sentiment. "I see, thanks. But I wouldn't want you to become the Blackened in the first place." For some reason, Makoto felt like the murderous words that came out of Junko's mouth seemed like a natural thing for her to say. She seemed very surprised by Makoto's response and quickly blurted out, "Huh? Are you serious? I was just kidding." "Huh? Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry for acting so weird." "No worries, it's just chalking up to you being woozy from your recovery." She returned to her usual bubbly self, let out a big stretch, and turned to Makoto. "I'm gonna get going now. Make sure you don't get killed before the next person arrives." After seeing her off, Makoto laid back down in the bed and started thinking to himself. What is this strange feeling? His dull headache continued as his thoughts began to blur. I was just talking to Junko, but I felt like I was talking to someone else. Who is she? The more he thought, the more it felt like his memories were sinking into a thick swamp. Each throb of pain, pulsating in his head, felt like a wave on the surface of that swamp. What is this feeling? It felt very unpleasant, as though someone's voice was screaming at him from inside his head. Makoto tried to organize his thoughts and go over everything that had happened to him, but he was interrupted by the sound of a bell. Unlike the dorm rooms, the nurse's office didn't have a doorbell. The bell sound that Makoto heard was ringing throughout the entire building.
Ahem, ahem. Testing, mic check, 1, 2. This is a test of the school broadcast system.
It was Monokuma's voice.
Now that Makoto has finally woken up, please assemble at the gym.
Makoto listened to Monokuma's heartless order and got out of bed without complaining. I have to go. He walked one step at a time, in accordance with the rhythm of his throbbing headache. Slowly, he walked forward, not knowing if where he was headed was heaven or hell. The gym. Makoto, are you alright? Sayaka ran over to Makoto as soon as he entered the gym. Yeah, thanks. Sorry about yesterday. I guess I really worried you. Please don't apologise. I'm sorry too. I barged into your room when you weren't feeling well. Now you mention it, said Makoto. What happened yesterday? Sayaka looked away for a brief moment, but immediately turned back, smiled her pop sensation smile, and shook her head. Oh, it's nothing. I'll tell you some other time. Huh? While they were talking, Kiyotaka Ishimaru, the ultimate moral compass, stepped forward, pointing an accusatory finger at Makoto. You're late, Makoto. Explain why you were tardy. The other students collectively raised their eyebrows as if they were thinking, why is this girl yelling at someone who is sick? However, Makoto just smiled gently and answered him honestly. I didn't feel well, so I was resting in the nurse's office. Can you note that in your daily logbook? I see. That consistent with my information. If that's the case, then I shall consider this matter settled. The conversation progressed smoothly, and Taka smiled as he kept talking. Ha ha ha! I'll take full responsibility for recording it. You just focus on recovering. If you ever feel ill, please report it to the health committee. Seems like we'll need to appoint health committee members after this meeting, though. Taka walked away, mumbling to himself as he opened a daily logbook he found in the academy supply room. Celestia Ludenberg, the ultimate gambler, saw the whole conversation and walked up to Makoto. Despite the unreasonable behavior, you knew exactly what to say to him. As soon as Celeste said that, it dawned on Makoto. It's true that he didn't feel well and that he had been resting in the nurse's office. When Taka asked him why he was late, even though he should have already known the reason, Makoto didn't feel annoyed or disappointed at all. It was as if he expected Taka to say that. Makoto felt strange that he had accepted Taka's personality so quickly. He couldn't understand why he asked Taka to do something as unnecessary as recording it in the daily logbook in the first place. Why did I say that? It's like I was used to it. His response to Taka's demands came as naturally to him as breathing. Why? Every time he tried to think about it, his headache grew even worse, as Makoto struggled to think through the pain of the headaches. A black and white stuffed animal jumped out from behind the gym's podium and began twirling around as it spoke in a cheerful voice.
Hey guys, is everyone here?
It sounded like he was about to lead the students on a field trip, but not a single one of them had a smile on their faces. What is it this time? Are we going to hijack a cruise ship and run into a gigantic worm? Of course, there was one exception. Yasuhiro Hagakure, the ultimate clairvoyant, still believed that their current situation was some kind of planned event. Monokuma just ignored him, and continued to address the students with his adorable voice.
Today, I'm going to tell you about our wonderful academy system. System! Sure sounds like a great word, don't you think? It reeks of danger, just like a bear. I want you all to trample over the deaths of your friends, and grow up to have hardened hearts. It's good to be a little naughty. I want you all to grow poisonous personalities. After making his nonsensical introduction, Monokuma moved on to the next topic. With this, he began providing a detailed explanation of the most vile system in the school, the class trial. Now, you can't just kill someone. You gotta kill someone without anyone else finding out you did it.
Monokuma talked about this horrible graduation program with casual indifference. But because the killing hadn't happened yet, his lecture didn't instill any despair in the students. As long as the killing never occurred, there'd be no point to the class trial. But no one could really say that a killing wasn't going to happen. As the students' suspicion began to rise, Monokuma continued explaining the class trial until... Wait, hold on a second. As Monokuma began explaining the execution that would serve as punishment, one girl stepped forward. Junko? As soon as he saw how angry she was, the rhythm of Makoto's headache began to change slightly. You're freaking insane, you know that? The girl continued to complain angrily. She seemed completely different from the smiling person Makoto saw in the nurse's office. Was Junko always like that? No, she's different. That's how Junko acts, but... Is that person really Junko? Wait, what am I thinking? As Makoto struggled with his headache and confusion, Monokuma and the girl continued to argue.
What? Are you saying you're not gonna participate in the trial? Only punishments await such blasphemy. What punishment? I don't know, throw you into a deep, dark, scary prison or something.
Different. Strange feeling he felt now was directed at Monokuma. Prison. No, they aren't that kind. A series of images flashed in Makoto's mind, and at first he thought it was some kind of parade, but he quickly realized that was a mistake. What looked like lights was actually buildings engulfed in flames. The red decorating this scene seemed to have come from human bodies. Despair. It wasn't confined to the academy, or even to Japan. Images of worldwide death and destruction flooded Makoto's brain with every throb of his headache. I've seen this before. Besides the indescribable violence taking place in all these images, there was one thing they all had in common. Who are they? They're rampaging terrorists wearing black and white masks were wreaking havoc in these images. They took everything. Money, valuables, lives, families, dignity, the past, the future, and possibly even hope. The masks these terrorists were wearing perfectly resembled the face of the stuffed animal arguing with the student before him. Shut the hell up. Say whatever you want. I'm not going to be part of this.
Don't be so selfish.
You're the one being selfish. Whatever you want. It's nothing to do with me.
The evil standing here before me, trembling with fear. But I won't give in to such evil.
It's my style to stick it out and resist till the very end.
you really want to get out of here, you have to go through me first.
Monokuma swung his arms widely as he charged at the girls waddling steps, but the girl stomped on the self-proclaimed headmaster of the academy with ease.
Are you enjoying yourself now?
Pinned beneath the girl's foot, Monokuma looked up into the girl's cold eyes and calmly asked,
Are you?
Huh?
Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is not allowed. You violated the school regulation.
At that moment, a chill ran down Makoto's spine. She's going to get killed. Monokuma's words sounded very threatening to him. It wasn't a prediction or a guess. It was as if he knew the danger Monokuma posed from the start. If this continues, Junko's going to... His mind still didn't fully grasp the situation unfolding in front of him. But by the time he realized he was about to remember something, he was already running forward. Junko? The impact of his feet combined with the rhythm of the headache, sending his brain and heart into a panic. No, she's different. She's...
I invoke the mighty summon spell. Help to me, godly spear Gungnir.
Monokuma wiggled beneath the girl's foot and let out a scream. At that exact moment, Makoto charged at her and screamed out, Mukuro! Watch out! Huh? The girl dressed as Junko and Enoshima widened her eyes in shock. As if to evade the charging Makoto, she jumped back with agility unheard of a teenage high school girl. And then, right at that moment, countless spears pierced the spot she had been standing just a split second ago. All the students, including the girl, stared wide-eyed at this sudden turn of events. Spears, too many of them to count, had shot out at the blinding speed from mechanisms installed in the floor and walls of the gym. However, Makoto was unable to notice this. Why did I call Junko Mukuro? Mukuro? As that thought entered his mind, a sharp sudden impact struck his sides, followed by the intense deathly pain that ran down his spine and spread throughout his entire body. The spear stabbed into his side, instantly tore his flesh to shreds, and shot out of his back, coating in blood and other bodily fluids. At that moment, the black fog that engulfed Makoto's mind was consumed by death itself, and his consciousness slowly faded. He remembered everything. Because of the electric jolts and the chemical compound from the escape button, because of that button that he had found by chance, Makoto Naegi managed to escape. He escaped this hopeless game, where he and his fellow students had their memories stolen, and were forced to kill each other. Of course, that escape is also what led him to his current life or death predicament. In the end, perhaps he only escaped from one despair to fall into another. But at the same time, his actions had unintended consequences for one person. The girl living a false identity as her beloved little sister, Junko Enoshima. Mukuro Ikusaba, the ultimate soldier and member of the ultimate despair. Her past, her future, perhaps even her hope itself, were on the path to despair. And so the curtain falls on Makoto's story for now. From this point, the story is about a certain girl. A girl who's more pitiful than anyone else in this sealed-off academy. A new curtain, along with a new despair, shall now rise. Huh? Time had certainly stopped for Mukuro Ikusaba. It was as if everything around her had frozen perfectly still. In the past, she was known as the ultimate soldier. She had experienced this feeling before, during her time with the mercenary group Fenrir. In situations where she was surrounded by a hopeless number of enemies within the jungle or in a desert ruin, the charging enemies seemed as though they were frozen in time, which allowed her to claim a decisive victory in all of her battles. But this wasn't a battlefield, so why did this familiar sensation activate once again? In order to understand what had happened, Mukuro slowly tried to assess the current situation from within this frozen world. Junko and Mukuro were both children of despair, but Junko Enoshima, the true ultimate despair, harbours a far deeper darkness within her. Though their last names are different, Mukuro is Junko's older sister, connected by the bonds of blood. She cooperated with Junko's hopeless plan and impersonated her under the pretense of participating in the killing game alongside her classmates. According to the plan, Mukuro was supposed to oppose Monokuma, who her sister was controlling, and be locked in a dungeon as punishment. Isolated from the others, she would then escape the dungeon and perform various acts intended to deprive the students of hope. That was the role she had been assigned. When Makoto succumbed to his headache, Junko ordered her to see if the shock had caused him to remember anything that could make him a liability. He woke up as she was tending to him, but she made small talk with him, but she didn't notice any change in his behaviour. Until this point, she was certain that there shouldn't be any problems. Nothing could possibly go wrong. She stomped on Monokuma like her sister ordered her to do, and flawlessly spoke the lines she was taught to memorize. Afterward, she would fall through a trapdoor into a dungeon and remain isolated from the other students. That was her role. She hadn't done anything wrong. There were no problems. There were no problems. She repeated that to herself over and over, like a silent prayer. But in that frozen moment in time, what she saw was not a trapdoor, but countless spears. One of them had skewered Mikoto through his sides. Why? Mikoto? Why are there spears? Gungnir? I would have died if I hadn't moved. Did Junko mess up the plan? No, Junko would never mess up. Was she trying to kill me? Me? Mikoto saved me? Why? Why did he say my name? Did his memories come back? Did I not realize that? Did I make a mistake? Is that why Junko got angry? Is this punishment? Is it my fault? Junko tried to kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Slowly, time came back to her world. Mukuro could feel her face turning pale as she slowly looked towards Mikoto. The students' screamings ran throughout the gym. Sayaka was probably the first one to scream. But who screamed first didn't matter to Mukuro. Mikoto. Why? Mikoto was the ultimate lucky student. He had been her classmate for the past 2 years, and now he was a sacrifice to despair. Not long ago, he had given her an answer of sorts during their conversation in the nurse's office. He was just a pawn in the plan his sister had devised. But now, a feeling of doubt began forming in Mukuro's mind. What did I want from Mikoto? As her heart churned restlessly, she continued to think. In return, I promise that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you. Was I impersonating Junko then? Or did I really mean that? When did I start feeling this doubt? Just now, the moment he saved me? Or when we spoke in the nurse's office earlier? Or when I first confronted him about this killing game before his memories returned? Or was it before even that? Mukuro stood there, confused and overwhelmed, as Mikoto slowly opened his eyes, the spear still impaling him through the side. Mukuro. Mikoto, are you okay? Mukuro is no longer impersonating the ultimate fashionista. Looking up from the floor of the gym, Mikoto asked, Why are you dressed up like Junko? He was smiling. Maybe he couldn't feel the pain anymore, or maybe he was being affected by something else. But regardless, Mikoto ignored the fact that he was dying just to give Mukuro his warm smile. I'm glad you're safe, Mukuro. As soon as she heard Mikoto's weak, fading voice, something inside Mukuro snapped. From within the shell of despair she had built up, an intense emotion began flowing out. No, this is all wrong. She couldn't hold back the emotion any longer. No. And for the first time in her entire life, Mukuro unleashed a scream into the world. As Mukuro fell to her knees and clutched her head, a small shadow started walking towards her back. The stuffed animal that had been under her foot, Monokuma. His claws were extended, and he was no longer walking with his usual waddle. Instead, he moved like a beast, silently stalking its prey, as he slowly advanced within his target's blind spot. As he inched closer to Mukuro, Monokuma raised his razor-sharp claws, crouched on his haunches, and suddenly leapt towards the back of her neck. However, just before those claws could reach the paralyzed Mukuro, a dark shadow moved in from the side and swatted those claws away with one blow. His lunge deflected, Monokuma was sent flying through the air, spinning wildly before crashing into the wall. Damn you! What are you trying to do? Sakura Ogami, the ultimate martial artist, had just prevented another tragedy. Oh, that was her that said that. Damn you! What are you trying to do? She stood before Monokuma and addressed him in a loud, booming voice. Not only did you attempt to kill Junko for violating school regulations, you even attacked Makoto, who had nothing to do with this. If you plan to continue acting in such a savage manner, there is no reason for us to play along with your game. Byakuya Togami, the ultimate affluent progeny, smirked condescendingly at Sakura. Fool. One could say you've already violated school regulations with your senseless actions. He looked as if he honestly did not care if his fellow students lived or died at all. Well, she merely deflected the headmaster's attack for now, so I don't think it truly counts as an act of violence. Oh, that was Celeste. Well, she merely deflected the headmaster's attack just now, so I do not think it truly counts as an act of violence. Like Byakuya, Celeste seemed unfazed as she shied at him over his words. However, the banter between the two was enough to stir the stunned students to action. Makoto! Sayaka was the first one to run towards Makoto, who lay bleeding from his stomach. But Monokuma stopped her, shouting in a tone of voice that seemed completely out of character. Be careful! Don't get too close to those two! Huh? Startled by Monokuma's desperate tone, Sayaka and the others stopped moving almost instinctively. The students looked around at each other. Instead of the usual playful gites, Monokuma walked towards them with deliberate, methodical steps. And then he suddenly blurted out something that took everyone, including Mukuro Ikusaba, by surprise. Sure, you're probably confused by this sudden turn of events, but I want you guys to work together. Huh? As Mukuro slowly turned her head towards Monokuma, he pointed at her and yelled, Mukuro Ikusaba and her accomplice Makoto Naegi are the terrorists responsible for locking you all inside the academy. Once again, time stopped for Mukuro, but this time, she wasn't the only one affected. Everyone seemed to be frozen in shock. After a few seconds of silence, Ao Ashihina, the ultimate swimming pro, spoke first. Huh? You're kidding, right? I mean, Makoto is a terrorist? That's impossible. And why Mukuro, anyway? I mean, that's Junko. Monokuma began slowly explaining to Ao. The real Junko must be imprisoned somewhere in this school. Worst case scenario, she might be killed. Mukuro must have researched which one of you would be easiest for her to impersonate and hid among you all pretending to be her. She was probably trying to make sure the killing game went smoothly. Suddenly, Monokuma's hands and feet began jerking in an awkward motion as she looked at the other students and introduced himself. I'm Beshki Marurai, the ultimate hacker, a character from Zero. I'm your upperclassman. I hacked into the academy from the outside, and I was able to take control of Monokuma's body just a little while ago. Take control from who? From the head of the terrorist organization that's controlling this robot from the outside. What? What are you saying, Junko? Mukuro trembled as she heard the words coming out of Monokuma's mouth. For a brief moment, she clung to the hope that her sister wasn't trying to kill her, but as soon as that hope was born, it was immediately consumed by despair. Junko had the power to transform hope into despair. She would never let anyone hack her that easily. There was only one explanation. Junko Enoshima was pretending to be someone named Beshiki in order to frame Mukuro and Makoto. It was as though Junko was using Mukuro's survival as a branching path to lead the students to a different despair. Monokuma continued talking, telling the other students more lies designed to prod them to action. On your first day of Host Peak Academy, you guys were exposed to sleeping gas, knocked unconscious and taken hostage. Mukuro and Makoto are probably the only operatives that the terrorists sent inside the school. That means they probably know how to escape from here. And then, Monokuma turned to face Mukuro. Mukuro Ikusaba was a member of a mercenary group called Fenrir. She's a wanted criminal who's killed over 10 people associated with the school. So don't get soft and think you can capture her alive. In fact, that's exactly what the cops told me. So the moment I saw an opening, I tried hacking the trap they set and tried to kill her. But what about Makoto? Monokuma gave a cold, emotionless answer to Sayaka's question. My guess is that his measly little ultimate lucky student didn't stand a chance at defying a group like Fenrir. He was probably threatened and forced to cooperate before you entered the school. Or, judging from his earlier actions, maybe Mukuro seduced him. Sayaka's face went pale when she heard that answer, and immediately stopped talking. Mukuro raised her head and shouted, You're wrong! Makoto isn't a terrorist! You all have to believe me! The whole gym fell silent. And then, as if he was speaking for everyone there, Taka stepped forward and nervously asked, Hold on! What do you mean, Makoto isn't a terrorist? It sounds like you're saying that there's no doubt that you, in fact, are a terrorist. I ask that you correct yourself at once and say we are not terrorists. Celeste began expressing her own doubts as well. It is strange. Does it not seem odd that she is so protective of someone we all just met a few days ago? Mukuro stood in silence. The other students' faces began to fill with suspicion and doubt as they realized they weren't looking at the real Junko Enoshima. Byakuya pushed up his glasses and began coldly pointing out what seemed out of place to him. I heard that fool Makoto, or whatever his name is, call you Mukuro instead of Junko. How would Makoto know that your name is really Mukuro if he just met you not that long ago? I've also heard of Fenrir, continued Byakuya. As I recall, his members have a tattoo somewhere on their body. Instinctively, Byakuya's word put Mukuro into a calm state of mind. In hostile situations, her defensive reflexes as the ultimate soldier often manifested themselves. Mukuro's tattoo was on the back of her right hand. She wondered how she could hide this from the other students without also calling attention to it. But in the end, this concern was in vain. If the police records are true, she should have a tattoo on the back of her right hand. As Monokuma freely divulged this information. All right, cried Taka, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Show us the back of your right hand and prove your innocence. Monokuma dispensed another unnecessary remark. Make sure you look real close. She might have covered it up with foundation. Junko had ordered Mukuro to hide her tattoo with foundation, so Monokuma's information was entirely true. There was nothing Mukuro could do except stay quiet. However, she wasn't staying quiet because her identity was about to be exposed. She was struck by the realization that her sister was completely serious about pinning this on her. Why the hesitation? Shouted the foolishly honest Taka. As my classmate, I have complete faith in you. From behind him, Ifumi Yamada, the ultimate fanfic creator, murmured to himself as cold sweat ran down his cheeks.
Well, look at that. I guess this is what they call a checkmate, huh?
Why don't you just fess up already, you fucking bastard? In contrast to Ifumi, Mondo Owada, the ultimate biker gang leader, was royally pissed. However, there were some students who were busy questioning Monokuma instead of Mukuro. Hey, you're not coming to save us? Shouted Leon Kawada, the ultimate baseball star. You'd hurry up and charge in here already. Monokuma looked at Leon and shook his head softly. The police can't help you right now. Not only are you guys hostages, it's possible that the entire school has been rigged with explosives and poisonous gas. I hacked into this Monokuma robot to investigate that for myself. Then what about everyone on that DVD? What about everyone outside the school? Asked Sayaka. The memory of the DVD she was forced to watch yesterday still weighed heavily on her mind, but Monokuma didn't have a clear answer. I don't know anything about any DVDs, but there are definitely terrorists causing havoc out here. Law enforcement around the world is in shambles trying to deal with this. That's impossible. Sayaka shuddered and collapsed to her knees. Sayaka! Next to her, Chihiro Fujisaki, the ultimate programmer, was unsure about what she should do. Behind her, two other girls stood silently. The first was Toko Fukawa, the ultimate writing prodigy. She seemed to be trying very hard not to look at Makoto as he lay bleeding. The other was a quiet girl who hadn't talked about herself much, named Kyoko Kirigiri. Unlike Toko, Kyoko was watching everything intently, as if she was studying the scene of a crime. From Makoto's breathing patterns to subtle changes in Makuro's facial expressions, nothing was escaping her attention. Suddenly, Toko began nervously talking to Sakura. So, anyway, let's just say that Mukuro woman, or whoever's over there, is a terrorist. Hurry up and beat her to death or something. We don't know that yet, said Sakura. My fists do not mete out justice based on a simple speculation. Sakura tried to get near Makoto to examine his wounds, but Monokuma stood in her way, shouting, "Don't come any closer!" This meant that Mukuro was the only one who could get close to Makoto. She had ended countless lives on the battlefield, she knew from experience. If she didn't treat Makoto's wounds, he would die. His wounds were not immediately fatal, but if he continued losing blood, he would eventually slip into shock and die shortly thereafter. Please, you need to treat Makoto first. Absolutely not, said Byakuya, harshly interrupting Mukuro. Tying you up and examining the back of your right hand is our first priority. Hey, Makoto's in danger. Now's not the time for that, said Ao, as she cast a worried glance at Makoto. She was still having trouble understanding the situation, and hadn't decided Makoto was suspicious or not. Byakuya was about to snap back at her, but Makuro's actions stunned him into silence. She took a deep breath and then... Mukuro removed the blonde wig from her head. Where there were two long blonde pigtails only a moment before, there was now only short black hair. She cleared her face of all emotions, and when she spoke, her voice rang throughout the gym. I'm not Junko Enoshima. My name is Mukuro Ikusaba. The student stared wide-eyed at her open confession. All she did was remove her wig and clear her emotions, but in doing so, the person the students had recognized as Junko Enoshima vanished from their sight. The terrorist that had taken her place continued to speak in a calm, stoic tone. I helped lock everyone inside this academy. The confession of a seaside cliff moment has finally arrived, Ifumi blurted out. Wigs are against school regulations, Mukuro, shouted Taka. As if stirred by their cries of excitement, the other students began clamoring among themselves. Huh? Said Yasuhiro. So Makoto's wounds are, real? Does that mean that stuff about terrorists and, whatever is all real too? So everything that's happened these past few days wasn't a bunch of staged events? As the reality of the situation began dawning on Yasuhiro, all Leon could say to him was, "Shut the hell up." Byakuya just remained calm and addressed Mukuro in a condescending manner. What does your group want? If you were after money, you would have already tried to negotiate with me. Of course, I'd rather let them die than surrender you to your ransom demands. Our purpose is to fill the world with despair. Byakuya scoffed at this notion and began to speak once again. I see. Monokuma said something similar. So that ideology is what fuels your terrorism? It's true. If you did do anything to me, you would certainly fill the world with despair. But obviously, that would be impossible for you. Al couldn't believe what Byakuya was saying and frowned as she muttered, "How self-centered can you be?" After confirming that Byakuya had no more questions for her, Mukuro looked at Makoto, whose breathing had slowed, and let her voice show some emotion. But Makoto has nothing to do with this. You can't believe what Monokuma says. "What did you say, bitch?" shouted Mondo. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're a terrorist, just like Monokuma said." Mukuro looked away from Mondo and continued speaking. That's true, but Makoto isn't involved at all. So let's coldly brush your objection aside. I do not think trying to protect him will do you any good. After all, we all heard Makoto call you by your real name. That's... She had no words. There was nothing she could say to protect Makoto, even though Makoto was truly innocent. Though Mukuro was the ultimate soldier, her powers were largely limited to battle. Even a normal high school student could outwit her when it comes to debate and negotiation. If she was the ultimate negotiator, she might have been able to convince them that their memories had really been erased. But in her current situation, if she tried to bring up their memory loss, they would think it as a desperate excuse. Even Mukuro knew that. But even if she didn't know what to say, she still knew what to do. Right now, we need to treat Makoto first. And then she started walking towards Makoto as if nothing had happened. To the others, it seemed like Mukuro had decided to abruptly change the subject. Hold it! We will immediately take Makoto to the nurse's office for a treatment. However, we must tie you up. That was Sakura's honest demand. But there was no way Mukuro could accept it. If she was separated from Makoto, there'd be no telling what Monokuma would do to him. And between Mondo's hot temper and Byakuya's cold heart, Makoto could easily sustain further injuries under the pretense of interrogation. Furthermore, among these students, Mukuro knew she would be the only one who had experienced treating wounds due to her time at Fenrir. After mulling that over, she narrowed her eyes and went silent. Her mind was made up. She was determined to fight her way out of here and escape with Makoto. I apologize, but I need you to fall asleep right now. As she said that, Sakura instantly positioned herself behind Mukuro. She was completely within her blind spot. To a normal person, it would have seemed like Sakura had suddenly vanished. After moving faster than any human could see, Sakura's equally fast hands launched a blow towards the back of Mukuro's neck. However, sorry Sakura, but I need to get out of here. Mukuro parried Sakura's fist with a spinning roundhouse kick. Ugh. Sakura raised an eyebrow at an unexpected counterattack. Mukuro tried to use the momentum of a kick to sweep Sakura's feet out from under her. However, Sakura dodged and instinctively struck back against Mukuro's pivot leg. But Mukuro was faster and jumped up, aiming for a tornado kick at Sakura's chin. Sakura deflected the attack with one arm, then both combatants leapt backwards, glared, and charged simultaneously. Every blow they dealt was parried and countered by the other, and though they were both unarmed, the sound of their battle echoed throughout the gym. It was like a typhoon had been compressed to the size of a car and let loose inside the gym. The other students were powerless to stop them. All they could do was stare at the breathtaking dance of death unfolding before them. After 10 minutes had passed, the enormous sound of one final impact rang throughout the gym. The two warriors leapt back once again and breathed heavily as they stared each other down. My mistake. Though it's only been a few days, I cannot believe I did not notice such an impressive fighter was hiding among us. In addition to the surprise Sakura felt, it was as if the battle had left her energized. Mukuro, on the other hand, looked down at her arm, confirmed it had been wounded during the battle, and thought to herself, she's strong. I don't think Sakura is even taking this seriously right now. Despite being constantly surrounded by firearms, blades, traps, and explosives during her time with Fenrir, this was the first time she'd ever been wounded. Mukuro was powerless before the might of the woman known as the ultimate martial artist, and the strongest woman in the world. Just as I thought, I can't beat Sakura with my bare hands alone. If she had been directly ordered to kill Sakura, Mukuro would have opted to either snipe her from a distance or poison her. At this close range, she would need an assault rifle just to stand a fighting chance. I don't have time for this. She looked at Makoto and confirmed that his breathing had grown even shallower. I need to hurry. But at that moment, she had no one to turn to for help. Suddenly, Mukuro had an idea. It was true that gaining an ally in this situation was impossible. However, she could still turn one person into her enemy's enemy. Mukuro took a deep breath before she charged at Sakura. She then immediately feinted and charged at the different girl, Toko, who'd been cowering in fear from the battle between Sakura and Mukuro in the corner of the gym. This is bad. Sakura was caught off guard and tried to run after her, but Mukuro was one step ahead and reached Toko first. Why me? I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. Mukuro jabbed Toko in her solar plexus, and she fell into her arms. Taka and Ao yelled out in shock. This is bad. She plans to use Toko as a hostage. It's Toko. In contrast to their shocked faces, Byakuya just snickered and coldly remarked, You fool. Do you really think we care if you take someone we just met a few days ago as your hostage? Mukuro just softly glanced at Byakuya and replied, You didn't meet her a few days ago. What did you say? You met her 2 years ago. Byakuya scowled. Mukuro ignored him and held her bloody arm in front of Toko's face. And then she yelled into her ears, Wake up, Genocide Jack! It seemed so random and out of place. Why would Mukuro mention the name of a notorious serial killer right now? The students looked at each other with confusion, and suddenly, Toko, who'd been groaning in pain, suddenly kicked off the floor of the gym with a renewed vigor. She leapt into the air much higher than any normal human should have been able to. While hovering several meters in midair, Toko twirled faster than a professional figure skater. This caused her skirt to flutter, revealing multiple pairs of sparkling scissors. Countless tally marks were scratched into her legs, like a kill count carved into a fighter jet. If not for this situation, Toko's glamorous jumps and spins would have been a sight to behold. The girl formerly known as Toko Fukawa cackled wildly. Her red eyes sparkling, as her absurdly long tongue flopped out of her mouth. You called for me and so I appear. I've got a murder IOU for YOU. Yeah! Toko? The situation had changed so drastically that even Sayaka, who was silent until now, spoke up. Hey, you flash in a pan. Don't treat Genocide Jack like that depressing little four eyes. The dirty girl doesn't bathe herself at all, so I gotta pay him 5 times the effort to rub myself down in the shower. Toko's sudden change of personality sent the students clamoring among themselves. Hey, Leon yelled. What the hell does that mean? Monokuma just shook his head. There are some things even I don't understand. The students continued to panic at the strange turn of events. Toko, now calling herself Genocide Jack, took out a set of scissors from under her skirt and snipped them with glee as she looked around the gym. Huh? Man, it's been a while since I got to stretch my legs. So what are you gonna do here at the gym while I was snoozing away? Have an orgy? I understand. I totally understand. You guys need me to cut off your clothes so you can feel even naughtier. Yeah, right. Why the hell would I do that for you dumbasses? My scissors are only meant for cutting the supple, tender flesh of adorable boys. Genocide Jack was causing a ruckus. When she saw Makoto laying on the floor, she tilted her head once again. Huh? Big Mac? You're like totally about to die. What's the deal? Did the world fill you with so much despair that you came to commit mass suicide? That's so hot! But why are you starting without me? Toko! Cried Ao. Get a hold of yourself! Genocide Jack ignored Ao and let her emotions run unchecked, jumping and dancing with excitement as she held her scissors. Ah, jeez, I want to stab Big Mac's sides myself. The spot's right here, but the ribs are kind of showing it already. He's not even screaming right now, no. What does this mean? Oh well, maybe I can just get used to this feeling of alienation instead. I have no idea what's going on anymore, shouted Yasuhiro. This is all the aliens' fault! Yasuhiro buried his head into his arms, but no one was paying attention to him. The students' attention was entirely focused on Genocide Jack. Using that to her advantage, Mukuro began sneaking over to Makoto. As she cautiously picked him up, she confirmed that his body temperature was starting to decrease. I can still make it there in time. Though she was carrying another person, Mukuro managed to soften the sound of her footsteps as she ran for the gym doors. By the time the students heard Mukuro open the door, it was already too late. She had managed to escape the gym with Makoto. However, not everyone was unaware of what Mukuro was doing. Monokuma saw her movements at the corner of his eye, but chose not to tell the students. And one other person, Kyoko Kirigiri. She saw Mukuro carry Makoto away, but did not inform the others as she watched them leave in silence. As everyone wrestled with their own personal thoughts and speculations, Hope's Peak Academy began walking a path towards a completely different chaos. With Makoto on her back, Mukuro took several trophies from the gym entrance hall, and after passing through the door leading to the hallway, she jammed the trophies through the door handles. Though Sakura could easily destroy these makeshift locks, they would buy Mukuro a few extra seconds. Then Mukuro started running to the nurse's office, the place where she last spoke to Makoto. Everything necessary for performing first aid could be found there. Her little sister was her enemy. The fellow ultimate students were her enemy. Her only ally right now was Makoto, who was on the verge of death. Mukuro knew that even she wasn't her own ally right now. Amidst all the chaos, amidst her sister's betrayal and nearly being killed, she believed She believed she was the only one who truly understood her little sister. That's why she felt she had to protect her. That's right, you didn't do anything wrong, Junko. You just wanted to feel despair, that's all, right? Because you love me. That's why you wanted to kill me. You were trying to feel despair, right? Sorry I failed to bring you despair. But at the same time, she wondered if she saves Makoto and betrays her sister by disrupting her plan, wouldn't that fill her with an even stronger despair? Wouldn't that make her happy? But betraying Junko, what should I do? Mukuro closed her eyes and listened to Makoto's weak breaths. What should I do, Makoto? On the battlefield, where all you need to do is kill and survive, Mukuro was invincible. She could suppress all of her emotions and fully immerse herself in becoming a perfect killing machine. But on this twisted battlefield of daily high school life, she could no longer keep her emotions in check, especially around her little sister. Mukuro, the ultimate soldier, was beginning to question the ultimate despair. The impulses of the normal high school girl inside her were starting to affect her state of mind. Even so, the poor girl continued to run through the dark hallways, clinging to this conflict within herself. She was now walking along a narrow, hair-thin path. A path between the hope of Mikoto Naegi and the despair of Junko Enoshima. Meanwhile, everyone still in the gym was left in a state of complete confusion. Toko was famous for being a prolific author, but even though she came across as unsociable and depressing, her mind-blowing transformation seemed to have just tossed all that aside. Toko is Genocide Jack? Sayaka trembled with fear as Jack tilted her head and stuck out her long tongue. Huh? What's with this reception, you guys? You guys don't know who I was? Have I been found out? Or have you known all along? And why was the sullen samurai dressed like that? That outfit didn't look good on her at all. The sullen samurai was probably referring to Mukuro, which means Toko already knew Mukuro in advance. Confronted by this shocking truth, the students had no idea where to begin talking. So many things were clearly wrong by this point. But there were a few students, such as Byakuya and Kyoko, who opted to remain calm and observe the situation. Alright, someone better spill it. Who gave Mikoto an extra mouth to feed? I don't care if you want to stab him or slice him. I just can't forgive whoever put that ugly-ass hole in Big Mac's side. Toko, no. Genocide Jack spun her scissors in her hands. As she spoke, her emotions and facial expressions constantly changed. Even without the threat of her scissors, she excluded an aura of danger that made her unapproachable. The flank steak of a young boy in macaroons. Oh right, that's her talking. I was like, macaroon? What? Sorry. The flank steak of a young boy like macaroons. It's like a blue bird that pops out a golden egg. If you wouldn't just let me handle it, I would have killed him so good that even Talittle and Milittle would be eager to die. But poor Maikyunti's heart and soul have been stomped on by such a sloppy kill. It actually sounds pretty exciting too, but I decline. Toko, you're not making any sense, screamed Al. I wonder what happened to you. Genocide Jack answered by pointing her scissors at Al. What happened to me? I got bored, that's what. That sourpuss locked me up a few days ago, but when she went unconscious, I thought I'd finally get to do my thing. But I woke up for all this. Miyakitsu's soaked with blood, and all I got no clue what's going on. So damn confusing, all I can do is laugh. Yeah! No one seemed to be able to get a straight answer out of Jack, so Fumi made a timid remark. I've dealt with girls like this in my 2D dating games, but it doesn't even compare. It's like it's a triple S difficulty level to clear her. I can't even think you can't even believe you'd think about her as someone worth clearing, mumbled Leon. It was clear that things were going nowhere, and as if she were responding to everyone else's expectations, Sakura stepped forward. She might be in the throes of confusion. I should try to restrain her for now. As soon as she heard that, Genocide Jack stopped moving, stuck out her lizard-like tongue, and grinned wickedly. Oh, what's up? Are you gonna fight me, Bell Ogre? Too bad. My lovely scissors are only for cutting for adorable boys. Women should just stay home. I won't take my scissors with your filthy blood. Replied Sakura. It seems my words are useless on you. Sakura entered a fighting stance, determined to restrain Jack, but Jack knew she wouldn't win in a fair fight, so adopted a strange stance of her own. In a normal fight, Jack would obviously lose to the ogre, but if Jack focused on dodging attacks, the outcome of the fight would be hard to foresee. Of course, Genocide Jack's physical abilities were only obvious to a few of the students in the first place. The two women exchanged hostile stares at each other's students, gulped nervously and watched. Except for one person. Kyoko was watching something else. She was watching Monokuma. who was in the corner of the gym, unmoving as white noise emitted from the speakers. He had stopped moving the moment everyone's attention focused on Sakura and Toko. It's possible that Madarai's hacking had been disrupted, but an infinite number of other possibilities were also swirling around in Kyoko's mind. She brushed back her hair with her gloved hand and continued to watch. Though she couldn't remember her talent, the actions she was taking right now were fueled by pure instinct. The strange situations that kept occurring in front of her were shaking her to the very core. Her mind worked diligently to scoop up countless amounts of information from her vast sea of memories. As they were synchronizing with the synapses firing in her brain, Sakura and Toko kicked off the ground at the same time, and an intense impact rang throughout the gym. Thanks to the heated battle that was unfolding in the gymnasium, Mukuro Kusaba was able to buy more time than she had imagined. As soon as she entered the nurse's office, she rummaged around the medical supplies and did what she could to stop the bleeding. Though still quite shallow, Mikoto's breathing slowly stabilized. Mukuro let out a little sigh of relief. However, even though she was somehow able to stop the bleeding, she wasn't out of the woods yet. Miraculously enough, it seemed like none of Mikoto's major arteries or organs were damaged. Was this perhaps thanks to his ultimate luck? Or maybe he wasn't actually all that lucky. After all, the only sort of medical treatment he could hope for was partial at best. Mukuro couldn't decide. If only I could do a blood transfusion. The nurse's office should have several blood packs for transfusions. Mukuro suspected that Mikoto's blood might have been written in his e-handbook, but as she reached over to search his pockets, I see you're reaching for into Sleepy Boy's clothes when the world is about to happen next. Adults can keep playing, but you kids better press the B button, okay? Mukuro turned towards a familiar voice and saw Monokuma standing before her. You're all alone with Mikoto right now. Just think of me as a cute wild animal, and let your lust lead the way. As the headmaster, I must prevent any illicit sexual relationships, but physical education classes are just fine, missy. Though he looked like just one, like the one that was at the gym, it was clearly a different Monokuma. Multiple Monokumas have been placed throughout the entire academy, so it wasn't a stretch for him to suddenly appear out of nowhere. Regardless, the same person was controlling all of them. Mukuro had been wary of Monokuma attacking her while she was treating Mikoto's wounds. But his appearance at this particular moment seemed to take her by surprise. Junko? Asked Mukuro cautiously. Monokuma tilted his head, along with his entire upper body, inquisitively. Junko? Who's that? Junko? I've never heard of that country before. No more jokes, answer me, Junko. You were planning to kill me earlier, right? Junko this, Junko that. What's your problem? I'm telling you, I'm Monokuma. You must be a big disappointment if you can't even remember something like that. You're just a disappointment as a person. You're a disappointment as a sister, too. You're too skinny, and your brain is nothing but muscles, and your personality is just unbearable. I'm sorry, said Mukuro. She didn't need to apologize, but hearing a little sister call her a disappointment yet again was enough to make the ultimate soldier recoil. Monokuma ignored her and her current situation, climbed on top of Makoto's barely breathing body, and began poking his cheeks. So what are you going to do with Makoto now? I'm really interested in human mating habits, you know. What do you... asked Mukuro before trailing off. Monokuma lowered his tone and began whispering into her ear. Makoto's a pretty nice guy, huh? He even sacrificed himself to save you. He's so generous that it's actually hopeless. He's not dead yet, insisted Mukuro. Despite her firm tone, she couldn't hide the fear lingering in her voice. That's the most disappointing thing about you. You can't even say I won't let him die. I won't let him die, Junko. Mukuro could barely get a word in as Monokuma interrupted into boo-hoo-hoos and ah-ha-ha-ha-has and continued to torment her. As if you could do that. Too bad, no regrets, see you tomorrow. Is this all because Mikoto was the first person to smile at you? You. A disappointing, depressing, unladylike, inhuman killing machine. Despite denying that he was Junko, Monokuma began speaking at length about Makuro's past. The contradiction was very much like Junko, and Mukuro was so shaken that all she could do was watch the bear prattle on and on. Only the fit survive in this world. The only thing that kind-hearted people can do is die, you know. As proof, you're gonna watch Makoto die real soon. He won't die. Makuro's tone of voice had become irregular ever since she took off Junko's wig. Aside from a conversation with Makoto, everything she said as Junko was from a script that her sister had written. But now, there was no script for Mukuro to rely on anymore. Mukuro was treating Monokuma like she would treat her own sister. If there are other students she saw acting so weak, they'd never believe this was the same person who fought Sakura in the gym. And not just that, if anyone from the mercenary past could see her now, her stark change in attitude might make them think she was someone else entirely. Monokuma continued to rail against Mukuro.
Nope, he's gonna die. I know it's sad, but you just have to face the facts.
Monokuma wriggled his limbs and danced around, then pointed right at Makuro's face.
Because Makoto is going to die by your hands.
Huh?
Infighting among the terrorists. The big bad terrorist silences the weak-willed Makoto before he can leak any information. Doesn't that happen? All the time. In the end, all the desperate things you said in the gym turned out to be lies you told just to escape.
Mukuro frowned at Monokuma. You can't do that, Junko. I won't let you do that. She blurted out those words with a trembling voice. Mukuro was gripped by confusion about what she had just said. Am I defying Junko? Why? It was a strange feeling. To Mukuro, it was like she was standing on a ledge of a tall building and imagining what would happen if she jumped. A destructive feeling, akin to holding a friend's baby and wondering what would happen if you tripped and fell. Before she knew it, fear and anxiety had suddenly taken control of Mukuro's heart. As a member of Fenrir, as the ultimate despair, Mukuro had killed innumerable people. She had handled live grenades before. She had descended from the sky in a parachute as anti-aircraft weaponry fired all around her. Her heart never wavered on the battlefield. But now, it felt like it could collapse at any second. Monokuma, however, was as stable as a tree, and slightly tilted his head to the side.
Huh? Weren't you listening to my story? I'm not the one who's going to kill Makoto. You are.
What are you saying, Junko? Monokuma began giving a strange explanation to a very confused Mukuro.
Do you know what the suspension bridge effect really means? It means you push the person you love off a bridge and they'll be yours for eternity.
I haven't heard of that at all.
Life doesn't always follow what your textbooks say. It's sad, but that's what love is.
His words made no sense, and Mukuro couldn't think of anything to say as she stood there dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Monokuma continued his little speech, intentionally saying things meant to antagonize Mukuro.
Basically, this is your big chance, you know. If you kill Makoto right here and now, nobody will even take him away from you ever again. Makoto Naegi, dead by dawn. The last name he ever spoke was Mukuro Ikusaba. The last person he ever smiled at was Mukuro Ikusaba. Doesn't that sound wonderful?
There was a certain appeal to Monokuma's twisted suggestion, and Mukuro found herself unsure of her own judgment. This is wrong. It has to be wrong. But it's really Junko saying all this. But so doesn't that mean it's right? No, this isn't Junko, it's Monokuma. Monokuma.
Are you sure you want to help Makoto? Once he gets better, he's gonna know everything. He'll know what you did to your classmates. I can't believe you'd actually erase your friend's memory from their time together and force them to kill each other. Makoto might get mad at you and say, our real enemy isn't the bear, it's her. Do you really want him to blame you for this?
Mukuro's face turned pale.
Are you going to kill the others? If everyone accepts you and Makoto dies, you'll be able to spend the rest of your school life together. You can't hold a class trial if there's only 2 people. Might be a good idea for you both to live the rest of your lives in this academy forever.
No, that's wrong,
And what are you going to do if his memories return? It's not like you were dating Makoto or anything. You were just watching him from afar the whole time. Man, you're so shy! You can shoot people's hearts and brains no problems, but you can't even woo some stupid boy into liking you. Do you want to know who Makoto had a crush on before his memories were taken away?
Mukuro trembled as Monokuma continued pressing the issue, gradually loosening the screws, keeping her heart secure. So Mukuro chose to pretend she didn't hear anything at all. All emotions vanished from her face, and she looked silently for Makoto's handbook. If you're looking for his blood type, it's not written in the handbook. Mukuro's face turned pale. Within 5 seconds, her plan to ignore Monokuma had already failed. But, since you're the headmaster... Your headmaster is made up of 50% kindness, I'll tell you anyway. Makoto's blood is type B. As soon as he heard him say that, all the anxiety, horror, hostility, malice, and dread churning within Mukuro completely vanished. Thank you, Junko. Mukuro's eyes sparkled without a hint of suspicion. So she turned her back to Monokuma without a hint of suspicion, and walked towards the refrigerator containing the blood packs. Fresh blood packs should have been prepared before the plan took effect. They will last in cold storage for 21 days. They should still be good. Despite her emotionless face, Mukuro let herself feel a small amount of satisfaction as she took a blood pack from the refrigerator. As Monokuma watched her, his normally emotionless eyes twitched ever so slightly. If a third party could see his face right now, or even if the other students could see his face right now, they'd wonder, is Monokuma surprised? That's right, they'd have the same shocked look on their faces as if they were seeing Monokuma for the first time. At that moment, a whisper crept out of Monokuma's emotionless face.
There should be a limit to how disappointing you can be.
It was a far quieter than a mosquito's wings. Even with her battle-hardened hearing, Mukuro didn't hear what he said. Monokuma shook his head, and the voice returned to normal.
It's not like I cared that you or the Ultimate Despair is hoping anything. It's not like I expected much from you to begin with, so this will at least help me feel despair.
Huh?
But seriously, you disappoint me. Just so you know, despair and disappointment are completely different things, okay? There are different as bears and pandas.
What are you? Mukuro's body started to shake as she turned back to look at Monokuma. He hadn't started talking any different than usual. Junko hadn't turned off the voice modulator and started talking in her real voice or anything, and yet Mukuro was utterly terrified. She was terrified on instinct, not as a soldier. Half the reason she was terrified was because of her instincts as the Ultimate Despair, and the other half was because she was Junko's older sister. Even though Monokuma, her instincts were telling her that Junko was annoyed with her. Junko, why are you annoyed? Is it because I betrayed you? Or is it because I didn't die like you wanted me to?
Ugh,
sulked Monokuma.
I'm beyond annoyed. I'm really angry, and I'm really disappointed right now. I'm so pissed I could take a rage nap right now.
Monokuma's anger didn't seem any different from his usual anger towards the students, but Mukuro could instinctively sense another emotion mixed within it. Right now, she could feel that Junko was feeling hopeless disappointment. It's normal for someone who's disappointed to lose hope, but for the Ultimate Despair, disappointment means something else entirely. To them, disappointment was tantamount to losing despair itself. Mukuro was a member of Ultimate Despair. At her sister's behest, Mukuro had soiled her hands many times in order to fill the world of despair. Despite her pride being towards a member of the Ultimate Despair, there was a clear difference between Mukuro and her sister. Junko Enoshima was desperate and was despair incarnate. She was born in despair, letting it infect other people's hope so it could rot them from the inside out, twisting them into her own image. For Junko, feeling hope was its own despair. Creating despair in others created despair itself, which caused her to feel both intense pain and intense bliss. Junko had walked the fracture created from the conflict between pleasure and penance all her life. Eventually, the fracture would widen until it swallowed the world and tore it in half. But Mukuro, on the other hand, had neither hope nor despair for the world, at least not when she was a member of Fenrir. Ever since she was a child, Mukuro believed she was meant to spread despair because of her sister. She didn't harbour any ill will towards the world, she simply accepted she was meant to spread despair, and chose to walk the same path as her sister. The doubt she felt was only a recent development. When Junko told her about the plan, when she watched the whole world burn at the hands of the terrorists wearing Monokuma's masks, she never wavered once. However, as soon as she heard about her sister's plan to make their classmates kill each other, Makoto included, a strange feeling began to stir within her. What started as a seed of doubt soon grew into a thorny vine ensnaring Mukuro's feet. As soon as she disguised herself as Junko and finished meeting the other students, as soon as she had confirmed that everyone's memories had been completely taken away, that vine began tightening around Mukuro's heart. They're gone. Junko's the only one who knows about me now. That's it. But that's no problem. It's just like old times. So we'll never go back to how they used to be, but that's fine. This should be fine. She had relinquished the past 2 years she had spent with her friends, so she could betray them and deliver death and despair unto them. Though her heart ached, Mukuro was beyond feeling guilt or remorse for her actions. But the question, why does my heart ache like this, still remained unanswered. Perhaps that's why she spent so much time talking to Makoto when he was in the nurse's office. And when Makoto gave her that one particular answer, something changed inside her. In return, I promised that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you. The words Mukuro blurted out to Makoto weren't improvised to further her role as Junko. It was an honest sentiment from the bottom of her heart. She was even planning to ask Junko herself if Makoto could somehow be spared from the plan. Over the past 2 years, Mukuro's interest had been slowly shifting away from her sister and toward the world itself. By extension, her interest also included Mikoto, the first person to ever smile at her and make her feel connected to the world. He was like a sapling of pure honesty that had taken root in Mukuro's heart. But by the time she realized that, the tree had already rotted. As Mukuro struggled to understand the situation, Monokuma let out a sigh and said,
I wonder which part of you is a wolf anyway.
You're just a dog that blindly follows Junko's orders.
What does the tattoo on your hand even mean? Are you just a bitch who pledged her loyalty to her owner? I bet Toko would say that, I'm positive.
Monokuma continued to talk as Mukuro stood in confusion.
I was obviously lying when I said Mikoto's blood is type B.
What? Cried Mukuro. You lied, Junko? A normal person would have been suspicious.
I never thought you'd actually believe me just now. I must have misplaced my eyes because I totally did not see that coming. Not even my ability to predict the future. How shocking. Jeez, I'm about to start crying my eyes out. Like some sort of robot cat, seriously.
It's going to be okay, Junko, said Mukuro. I know our plan kind of fell apart, but I'm still on your side. Are you feeling alright? Because I'll do anything.
Snap!
Now a sound came from Monokuma's mouth. That sound
was one of my circuits overloading. It's been so long since I felt this angry. Meet me on the roof of the school. I'll smash out all your baby teeth.
Monokuma started shadowboxing in front of Mukuro, who remained frozen in place, clutching a blood pack in her hand. She still looked confused, and Monokuma threw up his arms in frustration.
You're so disappointing, I can't even predict it anymore. Rawr!
A threatening roar burst from Monokuma's mouth as he leapt at Mukuro with his sharp claws extended. In that moment, her face became completely emotionless. It was not a conscious action. Her defensive instincts were honed during her time with Fenrir temporarily suppressed her emotions as she countered Monokuma's attack. Mukuro grabbed a nearby IV stand and used it to parry Monokuma's claws. However, Monokuma's claws seemed to be made of a special alloy, and easily sliced the bar in half diagonally, but instead of following up his attack, Monokuma continued talking to Mukuro.
I guess you're not much of a disappointment when it comes to fighting. In fact, if you were so pathetic that you died from that single attack, that would have been interesting in its own way. But right now, you're just incompetent at everything.
I'm sorry, said Mukuro. Couldn't help blocking your attack, but there's no way I can fight you, Junko. After all, I'm all you have. I'm the only one who understands you at all. Mukuro's words were riddled with endless dismay. The contrast between her usual stoic self and the way she was acting now was so stark, people might have assumed she had multiple personalities. However, Monokuma just quietly stared at her. He was perfectly still, as if all his functions had powered down completely, but Mukuro continued to share her feelings. There's no way I can just leave you alone. And then Monokuma broke his silence, but at that moment, a monitor in the nurse's office lit up, displaying a girl's face, Junko Enoshima. At the same time, a voice completely unlike Monokuma's began to play from the speakers. Hey, Mukuro! Junko! It's been several days since Mukuro had heard her sister's real voice. Though her face remained emotionless, excitement sparkled in her eyes. However, the shine immediately dulled. I'm grateful to you, Mukuro. I mean it. Junko's voice emanating from the speakers sounded very gentle and kind. Junko? I'm really sorry. I said so many mean things to you. I even tried to kill you earlier, and I was about to make you do something horrible just now. Even though I know about your feelings towards Mikoto. You don't have to force yourself. Even if you didn't notice, it was totally obvious to anyone looking at you. You never cared about the class photos, but when Mikoto said he was going to take one, you made sure you were facing the camera. And then Junko Enoshima, the ultimate despair, flashed a smile, a pure sweet smile. On the monitor, she looked like a normal high school girl teasing her older sister, and yet Mukuro could feel despair and anxiety encasing themselves around her. I always thought you should have tried hard to take pictures with Mikoto, but I guess that's what makes you so disappointing. Still, even though you're disappointing and annoying, I still love you. Mukuro trembled upon hearing those words. I love you. That's all she ever wanted to hear her sister say. Mukuro believed, no matter what Junko said, she believed she really loved her. She believed she was the only one who could truly understand the despair known as Junko Enoshima. She was naive. As soon as she heard Junko say I love you, Mukuro realized she never completely understood her sister. It was only at this moment that Mukuro finally understood her sister's feelings. Junko's words right now were kind. Perhaps that kindness was completely honest. The words I love you might have been true as well. However, for Junko Enoshima, this was her way of saying goodbye. She was severing the ties between them. It was painfully clear to Mukuro. And then, before she could say anything, the girl on the monitor made a remark that cut Mukuro to the bone. I'm sure someday you'll make your dreams come true. Ultimate Despairs never talked about each other like this. A simple truth stabbed into Mukuro's heart. Junko had no further use for her. Her own sister was parting ways with her. Mukuro had dedicated over 10 years of her life to the cause of ultimate despair, and at this moment it all counted for nothing. But those years no longer mattered to Mukuro. Her sister's rejection was more than enough to send her into the depths of despair. That's why Mukuro, even now, clung to a small sliver of hope. Meanwhile, Junko was still on the monitor. Yeah, right, you really think I'd say something that nice? Just so annoying, can't you just hurry up and disappear already? Mukuro hoped Junko would say something like that. She hoped that she'd start verbally abusing her again, or call her useless or incompetent. Mukuro was no masochist, but she preferred to be showered with bullets and contempt than endure this kind of emotional pain. But, I love you, Mukuro. Bye-bye. The monitor went blank, leaving Mukuro to process the horrible goodbye she'd received. And as if on cue, Monokuma started moving again.
Isn't family love so nice? By the way, did you know that in about half of all murder cases, the killer is a family member?
Monokuma spoke in her usual tone of voice. But it was unclear if his words were getting through to Mukuro. Mukuro let the blood pack in her hand fall to the floor and tightened her grip on the iron bar she was holding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Junko, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. She mumbled quietly, as if she was chanting a spell, and walked past the blood pack on the floor to Makoto's bedside with the iron bar in her hands. I'll do it properly. Make sure I do it. So...
Oh, said Monokuma, perking up. What are you going to properly do to Makoto with that big thick rod you got there? Are you going to do him? Are you going to do him in? Either way, I'm starting to feel some heart-throbbing excitement.
Mukuro looked like she was completely broken. Monokuma walked closer to her with eager anticipation. Suddenly, Monokuma's body silently floated into the air. Huh? With no expression on his face, Monokuma tried to see what had just happened to him. And in a blink of an eye, an iron bar ripped through his body. The tip of the bar, which had been cut diagonally earlier into a sharp point, went straight through Monokuma and stabbed into the surveillance camera. The lens was completely destroyed, and the camera shot out sparks as it broke down. The iron bar was still stabbed into the surveillance camera as Monokuma dangled from the other end. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but only static came out. A few seconds later, his functions came to a complete stop. Without making a sound at all, Mukuro had kicked Monokuma into the air. As soon as Monokuma's power source and his bomb circuit had perfectly aligned with the surveillance camera in the nurse's office, Mukuro plunged the iron bar into all three of them. No normal human has the skill to utilize such a technique. Not even an ultimate. All the hesitation within Mukuro had vanished. Her eyes sparkled like a panther stalking its prey at night. A tense aura surrounded Mukuro, even more so than when she fought Sakura earlier. Ignoring Monokuma's lifeless form, she looked at Makoto as he breathed softly and remembered her sister's parting words. So this is despair. She mumbled to herself. I am so sorry, Junko. I never really understood what despair was. She spoke without emotion, like a machine. But it's going to be alright now. I finally understand. Hidden within her, passions began to stir. So, I'll make sure I'll make you happy, Junko. I'll make sure I fill you with despair. I'll save Makoto. I'll make sure the others don't die. I'll let them escape from this place. I'll deal with the people on the outside too. You've invested so much time and killed so many people for the sake of this plan, and I'll destroy every last remnant of it. For you. This was not an act of vengeance towards her sister who had abandoned her. This was an act of mercy. Stuck between the ultimate despair and hope she gained from Makoto, Mukuro was being refined into something that was unlike despair or hope, and she had no way of knowing where her path would lead. And now we're at that chapter end. Now I'll finally acknowledge, yes, hello one man, I did notice you, but I wanted to finish that chapter. Because I also wanted to take a swig of my water, because I've been reading for like an hour straight. We continue Mukuro's adventure, playing the what-if scenario of Mukuro Ikasaba if Makoto firstly regained his memories and realized that it was Mukuro and not Junko dressed up as Mukuro. Oh, sorry, Mukuro dressed up as Junko. When fake Junko was supposed to be killed because Junko was going to betray her, Makoto at that point realized it was Mukuro, jumped in the way, and took a stab to the gut, which is why he's now in hospital bed. Monokuma, on the spot, devised a plan to try and make out that Mukuro was the mastermind and Makoto was an accomplice, which is why they had to run away and escape to the hospital. The only reason everyone else at the nurse's office, the only reason why they haven't been chased is because Mukuro deliberately activated Genocide Jack to buy them time. Now let me take a swig of my water. Consider that the recap. This is longer than I remember it being. I only remember it being like an hour and a half, but we're like at the end of like part 1 of it. Maybe this will only be anything we stream, but we'll see. If it goes on super long, then it'll have to be, because I'm working again tonight. Because I'm working like every single bloody day outside of like Wednesday and Sunday for like the next month now. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool, thanks guys. Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack can continue to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements. But when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks. "Oh my! Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly." They say there's a line between sadism and masochism in paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tip of my toes. As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in the room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest, and the remnants of the surveillance camera. It wasn't just the nurse's office though. On their way there, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. It was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Baseshi Madurai. Oh yeah, the made-up name that Junko made up, so she could help try and trick everyone. Well, I said, Baseshi's in Danganronpa 0, but I said, as far as you're concerned, it's just a made-up name. You know, like, it doesn't affect the context enough. Or Baseshiki, sorry. Assumed that Madurai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet, the beds were empty, but Kyoko still could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting here recently. Looks like they're already gone, Mondo remarked, but he was about to leave. Kyoko spoke up behind him. "I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues." "Huh?" asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening. "Clues?" Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. "Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured it would be the best candidate for investigating machinery." Sakura spoke up. "But isn't that dangerous?" Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, "I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Chihiro and I will just be in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from the outside world." "You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens." Sakura left the nurse's office. How did she destroy Monokuma like this? As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found and let out a small sigh before she spoke. "Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance." "Huh?" "I dragged you here into this gamble of mine. So if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help." "What does that mean?" But instead of answering Chihiro's question, Kyoko started talking to one of the empty beds. "Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it to its entirety." Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The ultimate question mark lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate programmer to make a request. "Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recording function? And do you also have a microphone?" "Yeah." "I want you to use that to record everything we're about to hear." "Huh?" But there was no one here. As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting the Monokuma parts to her laptop and turned on the record function. "I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now," said Chihiro, nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. "So what are you going to do if I told everyone that I'd found Makoto?" When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was just able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed to be some kind of saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge, she was already surprised that Makoto had been in the nurse's office this whole time. Not only that, but Kyoko wasn't talking to the bed that Makoto was under, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, her voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding under there was clinging to the frame of the bed, like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have even noticed anyone was there. Though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under a bed for so long, she could at least understand that their strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Mukuro Ikusawa. But you pretended not to notice. Why? Mukuro's voice was as cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as she responded. Because I wanted to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed. Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if it was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Mukuro seemed to come to a similar conclusion, and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mukuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against the wall and let her arms fall to her side as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kyoko thought about this simple question for a while. It's just she was searching with her own heart for the answer. If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kyoko quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am, or what talent I had to be accepted into this school. She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her, but Kyoko didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good or evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that the mythology that's been instilled into me. I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko. But before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it? Mukuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as if she was asking it of herself as well. What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy? The answer to that question was simple. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. The answer marked a turning point for both girls. Thank you. I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented a theory. If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility. Possibility? Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Toko hostage, the claims that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that might actually be true. The fact that Makoto called out Mukuro's name, the things that Mukuro confirmed and denied, Genocide Jack's outlandish claims, these key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years. What do you mean? Chihiro cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Mukuro. We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at this school. But it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what's happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope's Peak Academy, and our memories of that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we aren't even ultimates at all, just random people who've been implanted with 16 years worth of false memories. Though Kyoko's claim sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Mukuro once again. Which means I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth. Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence. But she didn't let that silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Mukuro. I have no intention of blindly believing what you're going to say, or what that self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said. She paused and lowered her eyes again, then declared with powerful determination, "Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. But I can only do that if you trust me and tell me the truth." Kyoko's conviction was clearer from her voice. Mukuro's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked towards Kyoko. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. "That's right. I completely forgot. You were like that." Mukuro repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kyoko and declared, "That must be why Junko took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others." "Very well, I'll tell you everything." After Mukuro placed Mikoto's back onto the bed and she began to melancholically tell the story. Or mechanically, actually, my brain can read. This was a great idea on my part, you know. Being somewhat dyslexic and doing the visual novel, it's almost as bad as when I read Death End Request 1.5 on a natural video. That was fun. That took like way too many takes. Anyway, the story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair. A girl who only felt truly happy when she was filled with despair itself. A plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that. How the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Mukuro provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded even more outrageous than Kyoko had expected. And through her story, Kyoko was able to learn the truth about herself. Who she is and why she came to the academy. The fate of the academy's real headmaster, Kyoko's father. As she listened to Mukuro's story, Kyoko remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps her memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped to lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no guarantee Kyoko would even believe her story. After Mukuro finished speaking, Kyoko stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she was able to listen to Mukuro's story without interrupting her or dismissing it as nonsense. Mukuro continued, "You don't have to believe me. After all, any picture that could prove my story is with Junko. All I can do is talk." After she said that, Mukuro silently walked towards the entrance of the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. "But even if you don't believe me, you still listened to everything I had to say, so... Kyoko? Chihiro? Thank you." After apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Mikoto lay, breathing weakly. "Make sure Mikoto stays rested. When he makes up, make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please." "Of course, but what are you going to do now?" asked Kyoko. Mukuro straightened herself up. "Despair. I need to make my Junko feel despair." Mukuro continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. "There's nothing else I can do." "No. There is something you can do." Mukuro stopped walking as Kyoko spoke firmly. "Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Junko Enoshima or Beshiki Marai, you are dealing with him. If you're dealing with him, he won't be able to lay a finger on Mikoto. I don't fully trust you, but if you're really concerned for Mikoto's life, I'm willing to work with you. Unlike Beshiki, who probably abandoned him already. Right? I'm sorry. I don't really work well with others." Mukuro looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. "But, I'll do my best." The door closed and Mukuro was gone. "I'm sorry for involving you in something so dangerous, Chihiro." As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Mukuro gave her, Kyoko turned to Chihiro, who was still working on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Chihiro slowly looked back at Kyoko. Kyoko? But what Mukuro said just now." Chihiro's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kyoko tried to calm her down. "We can't determine if anything she told us was true or not. There's no need to be afraid." But Chihiro shook her head and returned to looking at her laptop. I think she's telling the truth." "What are you basing that on?" "Well, it looks like Monokuma is really being controlled from the outside." Part of Monokuma's system has been connected to Chihiro's laptop, and she was analyzing. I don't know why my brain tried to insert a word there. She was analyzing the data within its control system. And it was then that the Ultimate Programmer noticed something unusual about it. This control program, I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational. Chihiro started trembling so much that she was unable to continue speaking. We can't confirm that, said Kyoko, proposing another possibility to avoid jumping to conclusions. It's possible that a similar program was being developed in secret. But Chihiro adamantly shook her head and said, no, that's not it. It looks really familiar to me. Kyoko looked over Chihiro's trembling shoulders to peer at the screen, and that's when she noticed. This program. Chihiro, did you create this? All the Ultimate Programmer could do was nod weakly. And that's the end of that chapter. I'm going to take another... I think I need to make a point between each chapter taking a swig of my water. I did like the first 4 or 5 in a row, and then my throat started hurting. First floor, the main hall. Mukuro continued moving forward, and was fortunate enough to not encounter Sakura or Mondo. Oh, you're still struggling, one man. Oh, I hope that eases soon. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to the hall as large as the gym, and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped out from the shadows to block her path. With this hall that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manners of heavy weaponry, Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place here. His laughter rang throughout the room as he wiggled his body from side to side.
What were you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival for Makoto's affections? Or did you help play matchmaker instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Makoto and Kyoko in this kind of situation together? If this was a suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing.
Funny you say that. But if this was a horror film, they'd just die anyway.
The killer was alive all along. Splat goes the blood, plop goes the meat. I'm a huge fan of endings where the characters think they're gonna live, but they're really headed into a final destination.
Alright, yeah, good reference.
Wait, what the hell is a tenation? What does that even mean?
Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Mukuro remained unperturbed. She continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma, as if she was waiting for him to finish speaking.
Well, anyway, I'm just so sad right now. A regulation-breaking delinquent is disrupting the harmony of this peaceful academy.
Last more than a week. Yeah, I mean, that's all the trade-offs. Like, that's usually the thing. People that end up sick really long when they are sick tend to also be people that don't get sick often, which is probably why they're sick for such a long time. Because when it actually finally hits them, it hits them hard. Whilst for me, like, sometimes I go through phases. Sometimes, like, I'll go years on end and not take a sickness, and then I'll get, like, last year where I was sick, like, 4 fucking times in the span of 2 months, and I'm like, please! Last year, like, January, February, and, like, early March was, like, I was sick or unwell or just struggling with something, like, 4 times. It was so mean. And I know it's because, like, I had COVID at the start of the year, so I think my entire immune system just got, like, torn to shreds. But it was so long. It was so many things. Anyway.
I can't even keep one of my students from running wild! Time to say goodbye to incompetent headmaster. I'm going to use Monokuma Evolution to become a big Magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student.
So it was like 2017 maybe. Yeah, and that's kind of my point.
As soon as she said that,
Monokuma extended his claws and waddled towards Mukuro. I am slightly... I mean, it's just my paranoia, and so hopefully I'll be fine. But, because I did stock check at work yesterday. It's why I was at work all evening yesterday. And whilst I was stock checking, I also cleaned as I went. The amount of goddamn dust that had probably been there for way too long, I kicked up. I'll be very surprised if I hadn't made myself sick, if I haven't picked up something. And like I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, my throat's a little dry. Is it just because I was snoring too much when I was sleeping? Or is it because I did catch something from the 10 ton of dust I kicked up? You know?
So, if I'm gonna mold you, then I have to kill you first.
Where as he finished speaking, Monokuma suddenly charged at Mukuro like a spiked volleyball, when Mukuro was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping her distance from Monokuma, just in case his claws could extend even longer. Wait for a bit, that's good. But then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Mukuro twisted her body to its limits and just narrowly evaded the figure's attack. When she landed on the floor, she immediately saw...
So what does the immortal killer want anyway? Are you going to tell the others the truth and escape with them, even though you know what the outside world is like right now?
Two Monokumas were speaking to Mukuro in unison.
Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on your eye, everyone's face, when they discover the truth. It fills me with such heart-warming excitement.
The two Monokumas continued to speak in stereo sound.
You said you'd destroy my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you, no matter which route you take. And you only have yourself to blame for that. Don't tell me you thought they'd be grateful to you. Even if you guys escape here, do you think they'll still forgive you when they get a whiff of the nasty air outside? Some of them might prefer to stay in the school, and some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. But then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it really doesn't matter what they think of you.
Monokuma made a little mistake. Despite facing down two Monokumas, Mukuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling two Monokumas simultaneously was a piece of cake for Junko. Mukuro drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and readied herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office, sharpened into a pointed weapon. With her weapon in hand, Mukuro responded in a cold mechanical tone. That's fine. I'm already used to that. None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Makoto would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clear to her now, and she calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. Junko, open the gates. The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokumas momentarily speechless, but soon they replied,
Huh? Why?
So we can all leave together. Another straightforward answer. Both Monokumas faced each other and began gesturing as if they were whispering to one another. Mukuro knew their movements were intended to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Junko directly. I think they'll understand if I show them the world outside. And then they'll stop doubting Makoto.
You always find new ways to disappoint me, Mukuro. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system?
It's true that the outside air is polluted, but I don't think he'll kill us immediately. Besides, it's better than being trapped in the school and forced to kill each other.
How can you be sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space dust, he interviewed the others and they all agreed they wanted to stay in the school. That was before their memories had even been erased. Do you want to betray their wishes? Mukuro blinked and slowly stepped forward. I don't really care about their feelings. Huh?
You're all I need, Junko. So don't worry. I'm always watching out for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair, and I'm going to make Makoto and the others happy. You want to revel in your own despair that badly? Then I'll trust the hope Makoto gave me, and I'll take my chances with them instead of you. Mukuro's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn and talk to each other again.
Oh my, this doesn't look good at all, Monokuma-re. This child doesn't realize her own hypocrisy. She's so disappointing that she's starting to reach critical mass, right, Monokuma-B?
The two Monokumas looked at Mukuro, who seemed ready to destroy them, and said,
What do you think, Monokuma-C?
Mukuro was taken back by their question, but her instincts were suddenly kicked in and she immediately dodged away. In a moment, a third Monokuma, claws extended, passed by her where her head had been previously. The new Monokuma unit laid with several spins and faced Mukuro, who had clung to the remains of the surveillance camera still attached to the ceiling.
I agree with you both, A and B.
The three Monokumas lined themselves up. The students locked inside the academy, this sight would have been akin to a nightmare.
Right on!
The three units began speaking in perfect harmony as their 6 eyes locked up to Mukuro. Suddenly, they each jumped away in 3 separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack all converged on a single point, Mukuro, who was still clinging to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. But this situation wasn't even a nightmare to Mukuro. Compared to the time she fended off 3 assassins who had invaded her camp one night back when she was still a member of Fenrir, this was nothing. This thought crossed Mukuro's mind as she dangled from the ceiling with one hand and thrashed her limbs around like a tornado. Intercepted by this move, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a loud crash. Mukuro landed on the ground and chased after one of them, brandishing her with a metal bar. Suddenly she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He had detonated the bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Mukuro down with him. But thanks to her honed battlefield instincts, Mukuro managed to avoid the explosion. She looked towards the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attracted the attention of Sakura and the others. But she didn't hear any footsteps approaching. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke.
Oh, you don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I disarmed the poison gas, and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kyoko and the others are in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Makoto is with them too. I doubt Sakura will get too rough with him, but I'm sure Byakuya would torture Makoto once he wakes up. I can just imagine him rubbing salt or pouring soy sauce on the open wound. Man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now.
As she listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices, Mukuro tilted her head slightly and asked, I'm pretty sure they're going to find out that you lied about that special police unit. Are you okay with that?
No worries. Once I've dealt with you, I don't care if they find out I was lying. You still don't get it.
Are you seeing how many quotation marks are starting to appear now?
You're such a disappointment.
Suddenly dawned on Mukuro. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care the students found out he lied, but rather that the voices of the Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokuma appeared. The one that exploded couldn't have revived, so a new one must have come to take its place. But there's no way Mukuro only heard 3 Monokumas talking just now. As if to prove her hearing had been accurate, the Monokumas suddenly made their move. The 3 Monokumas bent over and began twirling their upper bodies. From behind them, new Monokumas emerged like after images brought to life. The second row of Monokumas mimicked the earlier ones, with only 1 frame of delay, revealing that even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, Mukuro realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each.
Do you know this is called a circle dance?
Monokuma's thirsty voices spoke in perfect harmony, and they divulged information that had nothing to do with the current situation. Mukuro already knew that multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Junko knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Mukuro had no way of knowing if these 30 Monokumas were part of a larger contingent. The flock of two-toned teddy bears continued to twirl around. Mukuro felt that she was being bombarded with hypnotic images. But faced with the abnormal sight, the ultimate soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked earlier in the gym when Makoto was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of despair, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing through her body, speeding up the reaction time of her cells. In her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again.
Don't worry, I'll make sure Makoto doesn't die. As long as everyone lives, I can reset their memories as many times as I want. That's right. All your effort, hope, dreams, and determination are going right into the garbage heap.
Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10. As if the mastermind controlling the Monokumas wanted to show off her ability to manipulate them. However, the ultimate soldier knew what the true purpose behind all this was. She strained her ears to their limits and noticed a certain sound hidden among Monokumas' voices. Mukuro's vase remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The moment she moved to the side, a roaring sound shook the entrance hall. The ceiling-mounted turrets in front of the gate started raining bullets down on Mukuro. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy while she tried to blur her away. As if further trapping her, the Monokumas charged at Mukuro through the storm of bullets. Mukuro guessed the mastermind programmed their movements to advance so they wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran for the gates, evading waves of bullets and claws every step of the way, programming 30 Monokumas and 2 turrets while also predicting Mukuro's escape route. This would be considered impossible for anyone, but Mukuro knew it was possible for Junko. As ultimate despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities that surpassed the capacities of any normal human. Her display of power was only filling Mukuro with despair. Despair. The screen playing out in front of Mukuro was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokumas laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It is despair to the point of absurdity. It was all for Mukuro. But in the presence of such despair, Mukuro felt a strange serenity. For me? Junko's doing all this for me. Junko, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Mukuro really was a disappointment. She clenched her fists. Junko, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, and Mukuro felt completely silent. As a member of the ultimate despair, Mukuro's heart was filled with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turret seemed to stop for a moment. But that was only an illusion to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and avoid being picked up by the sensors spread throughout the school, with Mukuro at the center. I'll make sure I do this right. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned off her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder. As this coldness spread into her heart, it began to beat into a mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Mukuro's body and mind melded together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature had dominated the battlefield. Despair, bullets, and Monokumas filled the air. Mukuro predicted their movements and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokumas jumped at her, but she avoided its attack, kicked his body, and launched herself into midair. Bullets pierced through the space Mukuro was previously occupying, striking the falling Monokuma right through its eternal bomb. The impact of the bullets caused it to explode, sending the firing Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Mukuro balanced herself in midair as she kicked away 2-3 Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves into the path of oncoming bullets, exploded one after the other. Some of them exploded near the main entrance, but their blast didn't even leave a scratch. With full control over the entrance hall, Mukuro evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokuma weren't enough to destroy the door. But she refused to stop. Mukuro needed to get information for what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Junko. Mukuro wanted to fill Junko with despair by instilling hope into the future of Mikoto and the other students. That was Mukuro's ultimate goal. Get information. In contrast to her determination, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Mukuro was not currently speaking to Junko. This situation, this battle of death and destruction, was a conversation of sorts for Mukuro. All she knew how to do was fight. She thought she wasn't interested in anything else. She thought she didn't need anything else. All Mukuro needed was to be a sword to fulfill her sister's desire for despair. Her purpose alone was the crux of her existence, and she lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Mukuro. A battle to the death revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were in the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, uprooting the others who also speak the language of violence. This was true even against her sister. When Junko would berate her sister, Mukuro couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologize profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Junko was using a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair, who tore the world apart, was speaking to her sister with a language of power. Mukuro's heart filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on her conversation with Junko, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Mukuro continued her heated conversation. Endless rounds of despair fired from the school's turrets, and Mukuro's words intercepted every last violent shot that threatened to shatter her body and mind in half. She quickly realized that the Monokumas hadn't decreased in number at all, no matter how many of them kept destroying. Not only that, she noticed that the Monokumas had been joining the fray until there were nearly 50 of them for Mukuro to fight. But Mukuro's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to feel something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko, and learned hope from her acts of violence. For Mukuro, who had no interest in the world, this small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of the perfect world. The disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew no other way to live, continued her lonely dance. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair, which accompanies the music of hope. And that ends the chapter, with her dancing and dodging bloody everything. So I'm going to take another sip of my water, take another breather. Next chapter, I might have to go refill my water. I'm nearly out. The computer room's innermost area, Monokuma's room. How much time had passed? The surveillance cameras at the gates were capturing footage of countless Monokumas falling at the hands of a child who fought like a raging demon. The Monokumas bolstered their numbers, and now 100 of them were trying to sink their claws into Mukuro. That is not a big room for 100 Monokumas to be in, or at least standing on each other's shoulders. Most of them were running on autopilot, reacting to her movements based on prior information they'd received in advance. But despite standing before hundreds of mechanical adversaries, Mukuro's face showed no fear. She hadn't sustained a single injury, giving her a presence that was nearly divine to behold. Though Sakura or Ogami was powerful enough to injure her arm, Mukuro in her current state could potentially fight Sakura to a draw now, without relying on firearms. She took complete control of the battlefield, taking in her surroundings as if they were a part of herself. She dodged attacks from the rear as though she had eyes on the back of her head, and stabbed through Monokuma's weak points with her metal bar. No matter where the attacks came from, Mukuro deflected them all as if her skin were covered in eyes. Describing her as ultimate no longer did her justice. Mukuro transcended the boundaries of humanity and became a pure killing machine. But despite that, even though she understood the ludicrous power her sister possessed, Junko was not afraid. She felt not one iota of fear. After all Junko could feel was despair. She even started to admire her sister's attempts to fill her with despair. But that sentiment quickly filled Junko with an orgiastic ecstasy of despair. Are you trying to say she had an orgasm in that chair? What the... Anyway, Junko knew. She knew that Mukuro was neither hope nor despair. She was just a phenomenon. A disappointing girl who no longer understood herself. Who only knew how to be violent because it was all she could believe in anymore. Mukuro had become an avatar of destruction beyond that of any military force. She couldn't even be considered a soldier anymore. She was a natural disaster, like a typhoon or a tornado. Or perhaps, like gravity, she was now a fundamental force of the universe that only existed in bringing despair to Junko. The mastermind enjoyed watching her sister go all out. If Mukuro destroyed everything and ruined her life, Junko would still be comforted by the despair. She could just go right ahead and overpower her. Junko considered this for a few seconds until a familiar hopeless habit reared its head. Her habit of getting so bored that it made her sick. The girl who had been grinning as she watched the screen now bore her to look at calm stoicism, and she reached for the microphone connected to Monokuma's speakers. Mukuro was no longer human anymore, but Junko knew how to bring her back. It was a simple feeling, really, and with that hopeless feeling for Mukuro in her mind, the mastermind said just one word. Mukuro. Short chapter. In front of the main entrance, Mukuro. That voice. It was calling her name. Instead of using Monokuma's voice filter, Junko's natural voice was coming out of the Monokuma unit. That's all it took. With one word, Mukuro Ikusaba stopped being a force of nature and became a person again. Monokuma would not miss his opportunity. As if moving to the beat of Mukuro's shaking heart, a torrent of claws leapt to attack her, but Mukuro trusted her instincts and twisted her entire body to fend off the attack, leaving her with only a few scrapes here and there. But the despair wasn't over yet. The ultimate despair didn't waste any time making her next move. Mukuro, watch out! Huh? As soon as Mukuro heard that voice, her mind went completely blank. There was no mistaking it. That was Makoto's scream. The scream that saved her from the spears of Gungnir and changed her destiny. No, that's wrong. It took her a tenth of a second to realise that the voice was just a sound clip that Junko had replayed. But it was more than enough time to drag Mukuro, who was regaining her humanity, into despair. Right when she discovered from the moment of shock, Monokuma appeared from behind her and roundhouse kicked her in the temple. She twisted her head to roll with the blow. At that moment, a different Monokuma attacked her from the opposite side with a headbutt. And as soon as Mukuro dodged that attack, 3 Monokumas launched simultaneous drop kicks and knocked her to the ground. Ugh. The fact that they weren't using their claws meant they weren't trying to kill Mukuro right away. Before she could stand up again, dozens of Monokumas, waiting for her on the floor, climbed on top of Mukuro and pinned her limbs. One of the Monokumas waddled over to Mukuro and she lay face down on the floor and laughed. A pretty girl getting pinned by all these me's. I wonder if I should feel more excited about this. Don't make that face. If I wanted to kill you, I'd just pump you full of bullets right now. But I don't think the audience watching this on TV would like that ending very much. I need to make sure I do it right away this time. What are you planning to do to me? Mukuro asked as her emotionless voice. Monokuma gawped and answered, Nothing. I was going to stick to the original plan and make you play the killing game at this school.
I'll erase everyone's memories again, and I'll just make them redo the introduction and the entrance ceremony again.
Typical Monokuma fashion, he leaned his face towards Mukuro.
But it'd be boring if we had to redo everything. Maybe this time I'll have you participate as Mukuro Ikusaba. I'll take away even more of your memories, just like I did that irritating detective girl. You'll just be a poor little girl with no memory at all.
As Monokuma talked and wiggled his body from side to side, the other Monokumas danced and twirled around. Amid the fantastical scene, Monokuma continued to describe her hopeless plan in a nonchalant manner.
At first, you'll just be a girl of amnesia, and everyone will feel so sorry for you. But as they unravel the mystery of this academy, they'll find out who you really are. It's exciting to think how they'll treat you when that happens. Knowing you, you'll probably kill someone purely out of instinct. Maybe I should rethink my rules about self-defense.
You can't. Her memories would be erased. There was nothing she could do about her classmates hating her, but losing even her childhood memories would mean her connection to Junko would be severed as well. Even if Mukuro had no interest in the world, that was unbearable even for her.
I've heard of New Game Plus before, but this is the first time I'll get to see a New Game Minus. Should I tie you up for fun? Maybe we should take this game even more masochistically. Forget hard mode, very hard mode, infernal mode. Want to skip straight ahead to impossible mode?
Maybe I'll erase your memories after I drag you on a motorcycle, pummel you with 1,000 baseballs, burn you at the stake, and crush you with an excavator. Hey, you know all the executions from the first game. Mukuro knew that what Monokuma was talking about. He was describing the tools they'd prepared for the various executions they planned for the students. After everyone reintroduces themselves, they'll walk around the school grounds and eventually find a flat-chested girl with
amnesia, covered in bandages with Fenrir tattoo on her right hand, but a certain fanbase might get off on that. If this were a game, that would increase sales by 500%.
Though Monokuma sounded like he was joking, everything he said was deadly serious. As evidence, Mukuro heard a rumbling sound off in the distance.
Now then, your sweet ride is on the way.
Based on the engine's noise, Mukuro surmised that it was the large motorcycle that was supposed to be used for one of the executions.
I took the time to bring this all the way from the punishment room, so you better be grateful.
The sound of the roaring engine grew louder and louder, like the approaching footsteps of death. Mukuro wondered how Monokuma would drive it with such tiny arms and legs, but then she remembered she was dealing with the ultimate despair. Junko would make the impossible possible just to bring about despair, a despair that went hand in hand with Mukuro's fate. Did I fail? I couldn't fulfill Junko's despair? I couldn't save Makoto and the others? Questions raced through Mukuro's mind, but she wasn't able to answer them. There's no way she could have answered them so easily. After all, she was still alive. The sound of a motorcycle grew closer and closer, as if it was threatening to break Mukuro's spirit. Suddenly, Monokuma stopped moving. The other Monokumas continued doing their automatic movements. As this strange event unfolded, Mukuro noticed something. The motorcycle had suddenly gone quiet. After a few seconds, the engine exploded to life and began to approach even faster than before. Only a few seconds later, what appeared in front of the main entrance was an enormous motorcycle that ploughed through the groups of Monokumas like a predator hunting its prey. The rider of this motorcycle was none other than Mondo Owada. Mukuro and Monokuma were both visibly shocked by this turn of events. Instead of addressing them, Mondo accelerated the motorcycle he stole from Monokuma directly towards Mukuro. Just before the front tyre touched Mukuro, he popped a reverse wheelie and turned the entire motorcycle around. The back wheel swept over Mukuro's back, knocking away all the Monokumas that were pinning her. "Hey, can you stand?" Mondo asked as he begrudgingly offered his hand to Mukuro. Confused, Mukuro took his hand and stood up. "What are you doing, Mondo? I was so close." While the Monokumas protested.
"What are you doing, Mondo? I was so close."
Not in normal voice, but as the hacker, Beshihiki Madurai. "Oh yeah, you're Beshihiki or whatever, right?" "That's right. Why are you helping the terrorists?" "I ain't bragging about this or anything, but I have no clue if this, or it is, if you or this girl are lying." The veins in his temple began to bulge, and his cheek flushed with anger as Mondo said, "But still, I ain't the type to just stand around while some idiot gangs up on a girl." "What are you saying? Get a hold of yourself. You must be experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. You've deluded yourself into thinking you're friends with the criminal who's taken you hostage." Monokuma tried to explain to Mondo, but he ignored him, took Mukuro's hand and pulled her onto the back of the motorcycle. "Oh, shut the fuck up. I don't know nothing about Stockholms or syndromes, but don't go acting like you can boss me around." As Mondo shouted, he revved the motorcycle as if he was using it to punctuate his words. The ceiling-mounted turrets began moving, but the two disappeared before the turrets could take aim at the motorcycle. I love the character here. I know I'm interrupting my talk for a minute, but I love so much of what Danganronpa If does. Mondo is on the motorcycle that literally killed him in the first game. He's literally on the punishment motorcycle he was tied to for killing Chihiro, and now he's riding it to not only, you know, ride it willingly, but to save a life instead of taking one. I love how If twists that, you know? He doesn't kill someone and get killed with this motorcycle, he saves a life using it. As they zoomed through the hallway, countless Monokumas chased after them, waving their claws widely through the air. "Why?" asked Mukuro. "Huh?" shouted Mondo. His voice was even louder than the sound of the engine. "Don't get the wrong idea. I don't trust you at all." He lowered his voice slightly, as if he was whispering to himself. "But still, I don't know why, but I felt like I could trust what he said." "He?" inquired Mukuro. But there's no time for questions. The unit leading the Monokumas chasing after the motorcycle had almost caught up to them. And then, like the enormous maw of some fiercest creature, they brandished their claws in perfect unison. At that moment, the motorcycle zoomed by a certain girl. A girl whose fighting ability surpassed that of any normal human, the strongest girl on Earth. With a fighting spirit that defied comprehension, the ultimate martial artist kicked off the floor. A sound even louder than the motorcycle's engine filled the room. When Mukuro looked back, she saw Sakura landing on the floor, sending the pack of Monokumas flying several meters away. "Sakura!" If she heard Monokuma mumble her name, Sakura didn't acknowledge it. Like a statue of a fearsome god king, she claimed her breathing as she stood before the pack. Calmed her breathing, as she stood before the pack of Monokumas ready for battle. "Your pursuit methods seemed unbecoming of one who claims to be the ultimate hacker." An overpowering aura seeped from her skin, and her skin shimmered as an intense heat began to fill the hallway. Unlike the power of Mukuro's sheer violence, this was the power of martial arts. Mukuro froze the air around her, and time along with it, but Sakura was generating enough heat to boil space itself as she stood before the Monokumas. With that heat stinging her back, Mukuro looked ahead. Hifumi and Chihiro were cautiously peeking from behind the door leading to the dorms, whilst Ao and Taka kept watching from inside the building. After passing by them, Mondo slowed down the motorcycle as he reached the front of the cafeteria and turned to a complete stop. The other students looked warily at Mukuro, but among these students, Mukuro noticed two people who weren't regarding her with suspicion. One was Kyoko, who seemed to be studying the situation. The other was a skinny boy who was leaning against Kyoko's shoulder. "Makoto!" Mukuro's lip began to tremble as she sat on the back of the motorcycle. Ignoring the pain coursing through his body, Makoto smiled at Mukuro and repeated what he said to her earlier. I'm glad you're safe, Mukuro." Unfortunately, Mukuro was unable to realize the hope of filling her little sister with despair. Instead, she successfully planted the seeds of hope into her fellow students. Thus ends that chapter. Mikoto had barely regained consciousness while Mukuro... There's too many 6-letter names with M's in them, alright? Mikoto had barely regained consciousness whilst Mukuro was fighting the horde of Monokumas at the main entrance. When he woke up, he did something extremely simple. He talked about his memories. Most of the students were still skeptical, even after listening to Mukuro's recorded confession on Chihiro's laptop. Obviously, they were still not entirely convinced at first when Mikoto woke up, but after Sakura asked him a certain question, the ambience completely changed. "Then beyond the walls of this school, the world is completely destroyed. You're saying there's no one else alive?" Mikoto slowly sat up to Sakura's meek question. "Don't worry, I'm sure Kenshiro is still safe. I'm sure he'll still keep his promise to you." Sakura gasped. Kenshiro was the only man she couldn't defeat, a man who had promised her a rematch, and made her one other promise as well. "How do you know that name? How do you know about that promise?" "Because you told me." "No." "You told me?" "No." Because it's already corrected himself. "You told all of us." Sakura was silent after hearing those words. But she then faced the other students and spoke in a loud, clear voice. "I'm going to trust Mikoto." "Sakura?" Although Ao was shocked, Sakura continued to speak with determination. "What Mikoto just said is something I kept locked away inside my memories. In fact, I was planning to keep it a secret until the day I died. But if I shared that secret, that means there was a strong bond between Mikoto, myself, and with my fellow students as well." Mikoto continued to talk in a gentle tone. Though it couldn't have been good for his health, he continued to slowly talk. I should probably talk slower. About the memories that the other students no longer had. "Why did you know about the story I'm planning to write?" Are you a specialist Nen user who can predict the future? You already finished that story, Hifumi. You had me help you with inking. What? Wait a sec. How do you know I extorted money from that... How do you know I extorted money from that girl related to the Kuzuryu clan? Hero fucking extorted money from Fuyuhiko's sister. I only just connected that dot. The same sister ended up getting killed. Oh god. Oh god, Hero, you idiot. Because you even tried to sell my organs to them. His wounds were excruciating, but even so, Makoto kept smiling and talking about their lives together. As if it was his duty to do so now he had regained his memories. As the other students listened to him, they slowly began to realize something. The vivid accounts he was providing couldn't be explained by just passing knowledge. Clearly, some kind of bond between them all had been erased. Only Byakuya remained cynical. There's no way I would have grown closer to any of you. It's likely that you're all secretly working together. Though Byakuya was still hostile towards Makoto's recollection of their memories, for the time being, he determined that Makoto wasn't actually a terrorist. Mukuro had brought enough time for Makoto to wake up and share his memories with the others. Even if she hadn't intended to do that, it was still a small sliver of hope that she grasped tightly. Short chapter. And we have a sip of my water. That was like 3 shortest chapters in a row. And actually, I'm going to make this as a general break, because I've drunk a lot of water, so I need loo. So I'll take this more of like a general break for 5 minutes. I really underestimated how long this was. I really only remember it being like an hour and a half. Maybe it's because I wasn't reading it out loud, and I was just reading it as it went, like in my head, that I just got through it way quicker, but I really don't remember this being this long. I don't think we're going to get Caligula Effect in this stream. Because I think if I did stream it, it would be too short of a stream. Like, Caligula Effect would be the one that would be an hour long, you know? But I'll be back in a sec. Just need to use the loo and refill my water bottle. I have returned. So let's continue on with what's left. In fact, we are in like the last act per se, so we are getting there. And now, as she looked at the boy who had smiled at her, Mukuro didn't know what to say. She couldn't think of anything to say at all. The battle was over, and Mukuro was now back to being a disappointing girl. She turned away from everyone's faces and apologetically climbed back off the back of the motorcycle. But Makoto saw her and slowly opened his mouth to say, "Thank you, Mukuro. You saved my life." Makoto gave her words of sincere gratitude between his weak breaths. Mukuro couldn't bring herself to look at him as she mumbled to herself, "Why? Huh? If Kyoko told you, then you already know what I did, right?" After regaining his memories and learning the truth, Mukuro should have been nothing but a hated traitor to him. Why would he smile at someone like her? Mukuro kept her head down. Makoto smiled, as if he was unsure of how to respond, and said, "Well, I guess you're right, but you also saved my life many times during these past 2 years, and..." Makoto took a deep, quiet breath and smiled at Mukuro again. "You're my friend. We all spent time with each other. It would be great if you could look for a different path, and not despair. And if there's any way I can help you, I will. Do you really think I can walk another path at this point? I don't know what you can do, or even what I can do. But I think it's important to look for that path instead of actually finding it." Was this intentional or a coincidence? Just before he regained his memories, Makoto had said something similar to Mukuro when she spoke to him at the nurse's office as Junko. Regardless of whether he lost his memories or regained them, those words revealed Makoto's true character. As Mukuro confirmed that for himself to herself, Makoto blurted something else that was almost too trusting. "And so, and it's not just you, even Junko can..." But he was immediately interrupted. Monokuma's face appeared on every monitor in the academy, and his laughter seemed to be coming out of every speaker.
I could have kept pretending to be that ultimate hacker, but it's boring to impersonate someone who doesn't even exist. If this keeps up, I'll lose my identity and turn into Konokuma.
Kyoko looked up at the surveillance camera and addressed Monokuma directly. "You seem to give up pretty easily."
There isn't a bear anywhere that gives up as easily as I do. Regardless, I'm pretty sure Chihiro has figured out the secret to my control program by now.
So just as I thought, you included that program on purpose. Kyoko realized something when Mukuro told her about Junko. There are 2 reasons such a hateful person would intentionally leave an obvious clue inside the Monokuma units. Either Junko wanted the students to learn the truth about the outside world, and themselves on their own, and turning their hopes into despair, or she was looking forward to that clue resulting in her own plan being undone, which would allow her to feel despair towards herself. She was an angel of everlasting darkness. Jesus, what is this, 2 to 6? Angel of Darkness? Delighting in her own despair, and using it to spread despair and destruction to those around her. Why would someone like that continue to play the role of Monokuma? Actually, I set the program for Chihiro to discover if she happened to be one of the final 5 survivors. I feel so sad and empty that my preparation was a waste, but I'm going to think about it positively. The word retreat doesn't exist in Monokuma's dictionary. Nervousness began to grip the students as Monokuma continued talking in a relaxing, uplifting voice. Now then, it looks like everyone here, including Toko, who's still tied up in her room. Let's start the heart-throbbing, exciting, special graduation exam. Huh? The students broke out in a noisy confusion, but Monokuma ignored them and kept talking. Don't think about it too hard. Relax, relax. Change relax to erupt for all I care. I'll still be the most adorable bear here. Oh, sorry, that took me a second to get that joke. Change relax to uppert, as in change relax to Rupert, as in Rupert the bear. Wow, that reference took me to... wow, my brain had to process that one. Visibly annoyed with Monokuma's nonsensical ramblings, shouted, I already know it's you, Junko. Stop this stupid game and show yourself. Oh my, don't you know? If you want to lure the mastermind out of a heavily hidey hole, you need to bring a worthy sacrifice. You're not worthy enough at all. Do you really think the mastermind would show herself for your pathetic hope and despair? He roared maniacally, then began to explain the special graduation exam. If you pass my exam, everyone will graduate, but if you fail, you'll be held back for a whole year. I'll reset your memories, give you a fresh new lease on life, and you'll reintroduce yourselves at the start of the school year again.
They say people's lives don't come with reset buttons, but I'm not a people. Whether it's soft resets or hard resets, I can do as I please.
Yasuhiro seemed confused, but the other students knew what Monokuma meant by reset. He was going to force them to relive their school lives again. As Yasuhiro struggled to understand, Taka pointed at a nearby monitor and shouted, "Stop this already! No matter what you do to us, we'll never commit murder. These past few days should have already made that clear to you."
"What was that?" jumped Monokuma. "Are you serious?"
"Of course, no one here would ever take another human being's life for any reason." As Taka shouted, one of the students, a pale-faced girl standing apart from the others, looked away. It was Sayaka. As she trembled, a voice popped up from behind her.
"What do you think, Sayaka?"
She couldn't even turn around from sheer terror, but Sayaka knew. She knew Monokuma was standing right behind her.
"Do you really think none of you will become a killer?"
Monokuma leaned towards Sayaka and asked her a question only she could hear.
"By the way, Sayaka, why did you go to Makoto's room when nothing strange had happened yet? Did you two have an inappropriate relationship? Or what would the fans think if you found out you made a move on a boy by sneaking into his room?
Or were you there for some other reason?"
I...
She could barely make a sound, much less scream as her trembling worsened. Monokuma had nothing to gain by cornering Sayaka and toying with her emotions like this. She simply wanted to see the young singer fall to despair over her true character. And for that reason, Monokuma did not relent.
Hey, what are you trying to do to your close friends you've known for the past 2 years?
Her determination from last night blended with the memories of Makoto had recounted, and ate away at Sayaka's mind like a disease. As her mind began to rip itself apart, she fell to her knees. A clear ball flying at just under 105 miles per hour struck Monokuma in the mouth with enough force to sink into his face. The speaker of Monokuma's mouth was immediately destroyed and the body rolled into a wall and stopped moving. Sayaka came to her senses and looked where the ball came flying from. It was Leon, breathing heavily as he stared intensely at Monokuma. Yet another, role reversal moment. Sayaka attempted to kill Leon, and Leon retaliated by killing her in the original game, and then used Hero's crystal ball as an effort to try and bury evidence by throwing it at the incinerator button from across the hall. He's now using that exact same crystal ball to instead save Sayaka. I love that they do this so much. It's so cool. It's so simple. It's so cool. It's like they take all these pieces and literally just flip it from killing to saving and make it work. And it's God damn it, do I wish this was canon. I know it would completely contradict the first game, but god damn it, this is so cool. Yasuhiro grabbed the man and yelled, "Oh dude, why'd you do that, Leon? The crystal ball is really valuable." Leon had stolen Yasuhiro's crystal ball and thrown it at Monokuma. That Monokuma bastard was trying to take Sayaka hostage. What was I supposed to do? Dude, the crystal ball cost me $2 trillion! $2 trillion! They don't even print that much money anymore. Oh, bullshit. Besides, the world is still all screwed up. What the hell are you gonna need money for anyway? But if it's safe out there, I'll just join the major leagues or whatever and pay you back. Well, I guess I could pay you back by doing something else besides baseball. As those two argued, Sayaka fell to her knees. "Hey!" shouted Leon, running towards her. "Sayaka, you okay?" She looked at him and stared blankly. "But Leon..." She had made up her mind, and she raised her head as she said, something I need to confess to you later." "What? Seriously?" Sayaka was staring at Leon so intensely that he briefly forgot about the current situation. "Not just to you, but to Makoto and the others too." Sayaka made up her mind to confess the sin that was weighing heavily on her heart, but Leon seemed not to hear the latter half of her remark. He ran back to the others, slapped Hifumi and Yasuhiro on the backs and shouted, "Alright everyone, let's ace this exam or whatever and get out of here already. There's no way I'm going to let my happy memories of this place get taken away." The Monokuma inside the monitor responded, Fine. Now that things are finally coming to a boil, let's start the graduation exam." Sakura, who had been outside the dormitory, suddenly appeared with some information. "The Monokumas in the hallway are acting peculiar." The students all moved to the main building to see what Sakura was talking about. There, they saw 50 Monokumas standing in 2 rows along the walls of the hallway, and one standing at the very end of the hall. There was something strange about the top of Monokuma's head. An enlarged version of the escape button that Makoto had obtained from the mono machine. As each student took in the sight, the announcement rang through the school.
"The me at the end of the hall has a button on top of its head that'll open the main entrance. You have 15 seconds to get that button, and if you do, I'll let you have it in place of a diploma."
The students seemed surprised by the straightforward explanation. Only Celeste remained calm as she asked Monokuma with a bored look on her face. Of course, it's not as simple as running up and taking it, is it?
Oh, how mean. Do I look like the kind of headmaster that would interfere in my students' graduation? Forget the gunfire salutes. I'm going to send my graduate's office on fireworks. 100 fireworks to be exact, enough for 20 seconds of hardcore partying.
The more perceptive students immediately realised what he was talking about. The bombs installed inside each Monokuma. They would explode one after the other, filling the hallway with fire as soon as time started.
After 15 seconds, the me standing at the back of the hall is going to sacrifice himself to give you guys one last firework. By the way, this probably isn't important, but that button isn't very durable.
This graduation exam was Monokuma's way of saying that he had no intention of letting anyone leave. It was clear from the explosion the students saw during the entrance exam that the halls of Hope's Peak Academy would be bathed in fire. Even if someone was lucky enough to survive the explosions, the burns on their body alone would be enough to send them into a fatal shock. Their lungs might be completely incinerated by the scorched air before that. Even if they sacrificed one student to run through, the odds were low that they would even succeed. But there was no reason for every student to run at once either, and a shadow of despair fell upon their faces.
Nice, very nice. I just want to take a picture of all those faces as a souvenir.
As Monokuma laughed from behind the monitor, Sakura stepped forward.
I'll do it. I have only seen the explosion once, but I believe I'm capable of withstanding its power.
No, shouted Al. You can't. Even you couldn't handle 100 of those explosions. Sakura shook her head.
I'm the only one who even has a chance.
Suddenly, Mondo remembered the motorcycle he parked inside the dormitory and said, Hold up, the motorcycle might be fast enough to go through the explosions. I'll do it.
Don't be hasty, urged Sakura. Even if the motorcycle is unharmed by the explosions, that doesn't mean its rider will be.
As Sakura and the others continued their debate, one person stepped towards the hallway lined with Monokumas. I'll do it. Mukuro! Screamed Makoto weakly. Makoto, with her back facing Mukuro, fucking six letter names that start with an M. Stop, come on. Ikuro, with her back facing Makoto, turned her head to the side slightly and gave him a small nod. She knew it would come to this. She knew why Monokuma would pose such an impossible exam. Junko is already looking forward to the next despair game. She's going to erase everyone's memories, including mine. She just wants to torment us and fill us with despair before that happens. But Mukuro, now spelt correctly, knew her sister's personality all too well, and that's why she's so confident. She knew that the escape button was real. Whenever Junko brought despair to others, she always made sure there was a possibility that despair would befall her instead. If the students won the gamble and made it through this horrible situation, they'd finally escape the outside world. That outcome would obviously fill Junko with immense despair. In the same way she left a clue in Monokuma's control program, Junko could not be satisfied unless she took pains to assure her own destruction. It was this quality that made Junko the ultimate despair. That's why Mukuro was determined to do it. She knew she was the only person who stood a chance of making that outcome possible, even if she had to risk her life. But right now, Mukuro wanted to live more than anything. She wanted to hold onto this world, a world she had no interest in previously. She didn't even know if this hesitation she felt was disappointing or not. My brain's starting to fry a little, too much reading. But she wanted to live and continue searching for a new path. A path where she could abandon her submission to despair, where she could accept the sins of the past and continue to live. Mukuro, who was known as a war machine, found her heart beset by overwhelming fear and anxiety. Until now, it had never occurred to her that determination was necessary to live. As if she was brushing that fear aside, she quietly said, thank you, Makoto. Unfortunately, the words she said to the boy who showed her new possibilities never reached his ears. Sakura, however, heard her, and frowned as she said, If you're planning to sacrifice yourself as an act of penance, I'll stop you with all my power. Though her words were firm, there were unmistakable affection hiding in them. Both girls had dedicated their lives to battle, and yet Mukuro felt a twinge of jealousy towards Sakura for possessing something she lacked. Mukuro leaned towards Sakura and whispered in her ear, What, are you serious? As Sakura's frown intensified, Monokuma's voice blared through the halls. Alright, I'm going to start the exam now. Ready, set, go! There was no time for questions or objections. The frontmost Monokuma exploded, sending a roaring wave of heat throughout the hall. But Mukuro didn't look away. She began moving, powered by resolute determination. Monokuma room. As soon as the graduation exam started, the mastermind focused her control entirely on the Monokuma holding the escape button, and completely synchronized her field of vision with it. She knew what was going to happen next. She could predict what her sister, Mukuro, would do in this exact situation, where she would choose to focus her superhuman skill with weaponry. And so, through Monokuma's eyes, she watched the scene unfold exactly as she predicted. A pointed metal bar burst through the explosion, heading straight for the weak point on the Monokuma was holding the escape button. Specifically, it was aiming for the point where the bomb's detonation system on Monokuma's power source overlaps. It flew straight and true, as if it had been fired by a master archer. In order to bring the despair to Monokuma, and by extension Junko as well, the super soldier known as Mukuro Ikusaba threw the pipe like a spear, so it could attack the same weak point she had pierced in the nurse's office. Once again, Mukuro died by spears, now she's throwing something like a spear. And explosions filled the hallway until only fire remained visible. The spear's speed and precision as it soared to its target defied all human logic. But the mastermind knew. She knew Mukuro had used her power to fill the world with despair. Power was all that disappointing girl had. But that power was useless against Monokuma. The mastermind had predicted that Mukuro would put all her effort into that throw, and Monokuma caught the metal bar perfectly between his hands. The force of the throw knocked Monokuma back several yards, but the pointed end of the bar never pierced through his chest. Well, that was disappointing. The mastermind turned to look at a different monitor. She wanted to see the look on Mukuro's face when she realized that she failed to strike Monokuma. Despair of seeing the final Monokuma explode right before her eyes, completely obliterating the escape button. She wanted to sear this memory of her disappointing sister's final moments as her newfound hope sang into a pit of despair. On instinct, she turned her attention to the surveillance camera that hadn't been destroyed, but instead of seeing Mukuro and the others, she only saw Sakura, who looked as though she had finished launching an attack. She only thought it was strange for a second, but then the hopelessly powerful mastermind completely understood the situation and shifted her point of view to Monokuma. But because of that single second, Junko would feel just a pang of despair. Chapter's end. I think we're approaching the last chapter now. The whole gang's united. And while we're at this chapter's end, also welcome back, One Man, I want to just reiterate how much I love the role reversal of killers in this compared to the original game. So we already had Mondo saving someone's life on the very motorcycle he was executed on. We had Leon saving Sayaka by throwing the exact same crystal ball that in the original game he used to bury the evidence of his kill to Sayaka. And now we had Mukuro, who died by a spear, turning like the metal pole that was slashed to pieces of the IV unit, throwing it like a spear. All of that, and I remember when I was first reading it, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Oh my god, I genuinely think that's such a sick idea for this, and it hurts me that this is like the only time they write Mukuro well, and it's the only time it wasn't written by the Danganronpa team. Because when Mukuro shows up in like the prequel parts of Danganronpa 3, she's written really badly. And I mean really badly. Like, it genuinely annoyed a lot of people when they went from this and they heard that Mukuro was going to be in the anime. People got super excited and then they watched the anime and she's a completely different fucking person. And it's such a shame. Because she's so good. She's such a... Because they lean into it a little here as well. That, you know, she's not that she's obsessed with despair. She's obsessed with her sister. She's obsessed with Junko. In Danganronpa 3, the despair arc, they just lean into that super hard and make her, like, extremely goddamn obsessed with her sister. In this, she starts questioning everything the very second Junko tries to kill her. In Danganronpa 3, Junko tries to kill Mukuro, like, almost every single episode, and every time Mukuro goes, oh, this is just her trying to show her despair, and then brushes it off as nothing. And it's like, no, this almost implies that this was the first time Junko tried to kill her by the fact of how much she doubts herself and questions everything the moment it happens. Mukuro should absolutely have... They need to do a continued timeline, like the If timeline. They really do. But Mukuro's the star. And they could even have it, because, you know, she's the ultimate soldier, they could even have it play similar. So many people revile Free. Yeah, it's because Free did more harm than good. It wrapped up the Hope and Despair arc, but the consequences it wrought along the way are... Yeah, it's kind of rough. Everything after Dangan 2 and UDG is kind of rough, unfortunately. But speaking of UDG, what I was going to say is they could continue the If timeline, but make it play like UDG. Because she's the ultimate soldier, and UDG is a third-person shooter. It literally writes itself. Soldier, guns, come on. And like you could just have it like a gun combat thing where you can do like some physical attacks and like some kind of melee counter sort of thing. Like Ultra Despair Girls original took a lot of cues and inspiration from Resident Evil 4. Have UDG 2 take cues from Resident Evil 4 remake with the whole knife parry and shit. I prefer classic Dangan. Yeah, that's fair. I'm just saying, like, if they wanted to do something with Mukuro, that would be a good way of doing it. Alternatively, yeah, they'd just carry on If's timeline. Make If a breakaway timeline instead of a non-canon one-off. Because, I mean, it worked for Atlas. Persona's whole existence is based off a What If. Gargoyle clone. It's an over-the-shoulder shooter. It's literally a third-person shooter. That has, although not identical controls to RE4, definitely take cues from it. Obviously, it's nowhere near as polished or as good, because it was also originally made for the Vita, so it doesn't have access to all the buttons, because it only has, 2 shoulder buttons, not 4, so some things were a little bit more awkward in design in UDG, where, they had to have trigger buttons, but they also had ability buttons and whatnot. Well, they had to figure that out as they went a little bit more. And the screen's super zoomed in because of the Vita's graphical limitations. So the main character ends up taking up like half the screen sometimes. But UDG is not an action game, it's a shooter. And they even have like precision shooting, where like you can't shoot a Monokuma clone in their head to destroy it, you have to hit the red eye. Proper remaster. Yeah, it's what I've been saying. I said the only problem I have with UDG is Chapter 3's writing. Everything else about that game is the reason why it's my second favourite Danganronpa. Beach Splash is a thing. Oh well, I haven't. I don't know enough about Senran Kagura to answer that one, unfortunately. That's what I'm referring to. Oh right. But yeah, it's what I've been saying. Like, if Chapter 3, and it wasn't even like it's badly written. It's just that it's uncomfortably written. I think it's a better way to put it. Chapter 3 is hard to approach because of the subject matter it talks about and how they try and talk about it. And from acquaintances, yeah, fair enough. And it's like, if they don't even need to like radically rewrite it, they just need to rework a couple things which are remastered they could fit in, because it's not even like major things. They could clean that up, and I kid you not, it'd be my favorite Danganronpa. It's because it's more contained, it's not as long as one of the main games. It has really fun characters that go through a lot. There's only one line of dialogue from one of the main characters that's kind of weird, that like everyone points out because it's super goddamn weird, but everything else is fine. The level design's pretty fun and creative. The bosses are pretty creative. The villains are different and weird as hell and creepy as shit, which are perfect for like a Dangan setting. And the best part, you actually get to see the city. You get to see what's happened to Danganronpa's world after the tragedy firsthand for once, instead of it just being what you're told about it. Fan base Senran apparently has crossover fans. Well, yeah, but it's like, I've said it many times before, but Nep and Senran were like, it was going to happen eventually. I was like, both companies that make those games had worked together on various things, or had both happened to cross over in the same whatever mobile game several times. I was surprised it hadn't happened sooner with Ninja Wars. I just wish Ninja Wars was better handled. But that's enough of that. I've taken enough of a break from my story writing. We've got the last big one coming up, so I'm going to take one more swig of my water, and then we'll get back on it. Even before they had the crossover. Oh, yeah. I guess. I mean, like, they're both... I don't know. Like, they're both kind of... Like, obviously Senran is infinitely more pervy than Nep is. Nep's pretty goddamn tame compared to, like, most actual fan servicey things. So 8 fans, also Senran fans. Yeah, I still need to try out Estival Versus. Out of morbid curiosity, because I said I got that game, and it's something that I want to cover eventually, because I've always wanted to at least try one of them. And when I fired it up, I was like, oh god, I might need to put this in the same category as Gungal, as no, I don't want to come across like a complete weirdo. Because I fired it up, and it's like, oh, there's this screenshot mode where you can share, like, special artwork and whatnot. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, I'll check that out. The very first one was, like, a compromising position, ripped clothes. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, it's one of those games. Got it. Like, I knew Senran leaned into its fan service a hell of a lot, but I underestimated how much it flaunted it. You know, it's like, so Gungal's equally really fucking flaunts its fan service. But I still want to at least cover one of them, because I've always been curious about, you know, that series, not for the, like, the fan service stuff, but as an action series, as an anime action series, and as another side of the coin of like that late PS3, early PS4 era anime games that came around that time. I know that Senran Kagura started as a 3DS game. That was a mistake I made in my Ninja Wars review. I genuinely wasn't aware at that time, so I thought they were both from the PS3, but no. Senran got remastered the consoles later on, but it was originally a 3DS title, which is wild to think about. Of course, a Nintendo game of all things had like the super sexy game. But I've always been morbidly curious to try out one, and Estival Versus is the one I'll go for. My only other concern is that Estival Versus apparently isn't really well configured for PS5, and so there's more technical problems with it if you're playing on PS5 compared to playing it off a base PS4. But if that happens, we'll just deal with it as we deal with it when I try it, whenever that may be. And that's a huge win, because I put it in the vote way back at the start of the year between doing the Dangan revisits, Resident Evil Code Veronica, or that. But I knew whichever one got picked, I would get to the other two eventually. It's just when. Because this was before, that pattern tally was back when I thought March would be more free. Sorry for streaming it. Well, yeah, obviously, I'll just make fun of it. If I end up not enjoying it, then I don't enjoy it. But if I enjoy it enough to have, but there's problems, then we'll have fun and just fuck around, And we'll just take it as it is as we go. But it's still something I want to try out at some point. But yeah, as I was saying, it was back before Riser was delayed a month, so I thought March was going to be more free. And so I was going to plan to do either Code Veronica or Senran during that gap. And obviously it got delayed a month, and then Danganronpa, because Caligula really ended up being way longer than I thought it would be, ended up getting stretched out way longer. We're only just getting this done, when I wanted this done before the end of January. That's how, ahead of it I was trying to be on it, but it just didn't happen because of other things. And so after Rise of 3's done, we might have some spare time, but it's also, I wanted to start other Atelier games after Riser. There's, I want to maybe tackle a Final Fantasy before 16's out, other than Theatre Rhythm, because Theatre Rhythm is just a celebration of the series, but not like a proper, traditional Final Fantasy. The Pixel remasters are at some point, which I imagine they'll... Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they get Shadow Drop this month. Something in the back of my head feels like they're coming, imminently, and it's going to be something that's just going to happen. But we'll see. I'm going to control what's PS now. Hey! But either way, it's going to be busy. But let me get back to this. I've rattled on and got distracted enough on this chapter's end as we enter Mukuro's final escape plan to save all of her friends. And the boy she has a crush on Makoto, because everyone has a crush on Makoto. Mr. Hopium cannot be denied. 3 seconds left. Amid the smoke, flames, and heat encircling the hallway, it burst through with the speed of a cannon shell. It glared at Monokuma with hot, boiling eyes that betrayed the ice expressions of its face, and then, sharply, swiftly, strongly, it transformed into a living weapon that cuts through everything, revealing its true form in that hall of despair. 2 seconds left. Monokuma, who was still holding the metal bar in his hand, tried to move, but in that exact moment, the living weapon carved a path through the flames and appeared before him. Its body, which had never been wounded on any battlefields, was sustaining all manners of burns and injuries. But even so, it did not falter. The fires in its eyes never flickered out once. A second left. The whipping weapon, Mukuro, slammed her knee into the back of the metal bar Monokuma was holding. The sharp tip of the metal bar pierced through Monokuma like a rail spike, shredding the detonator and its power source into pieces. Time's up. The 100 explosions ceased and smoke blanketed the hallway. Mukuro had dived into Monokuma, and the pristine escape button now rested in her hand. She and the other students of Hope Peak Academy had passed the exam. I'll be streaming Legend of Dragoon the time between W2K13. Yeah, that's imminent, isn't it? WWE. There's only a small amount of despair. Monokuma had tasted it only 3 seconds. Oh, that was a short chapter. Well, I suppose that's the victory, isn't it? First floor hallway. Junko. Mukuro looked down at Monokuma. He could no longer move nor self-destruct. When she spoke to him, a static-filled voice emitted from his mouth. It seemed his communication function still worked.
Oh, I never expected you to do that.
Oh, so you mean technically the game's out on the 14th if you pay the extra? That's when the game's ready. I genuinely, I was not interrupting the story, but that's genuinely my biggest pet peeve when game developers do that. That you can play it early. It's like, no, you can play it when it's ready. People who don't pay extra are forced to, wait several days until after it's actually launched. Got it. Thanks. Because you wouldn't release it early if it wasn't ready for the early access, you know? So it's actually done and ready to go on that early access date. But I digress.
It's better you to do that.
He still sounded like Monokuma. It seems his voice modulator was unharmed as well.
I must have overestimated you. I never thought you'd need anybody's help on the battlefield.
When I give the signal, please launch me forward with a roundhouse kick. Mukuro whispered these exact words to Sakura just before the explosion started. Okay, because I like being ahead of the algorithm. Yes, I suppose. After Mukuro threw the metal bar, she jumped into the air at the exact moment Sakura unleashed a roundhouse kick. Right when Sakura's foot made contact with her own, Mukuro used the force generated by her kick to propel herself at Monokuma. Using the ultimate martial artist's superhuman attack like a springboard, she shot herself through the air like an artillery shell. Enduring intense heat, shrapnel, and blood-draining G-force, she stayed conscious as she charged through the hallway engulfed with explosions and despair. Mukuro trusted Junko. She trusted Junko to predict that she'd throw the metal bar and catch it accordingly. Then she tried to look at her face as the despair sets in. The Junko Enoshima she knew would definitely do that. Although Mukuro hadn't predicted that her sister would try to kill her with the spears of Gungnir, she had a better understanding of her actions now. Yeah, I get what you're saying, One Man, but that's what they're banking on, and that's why it bugs me. They're banking on people saying, I want to get it first, and so paying the extra. When the game's ready then, so it should be available to people who buy it, you know? Like, that's why it sits weird with me. Because they're literally banking on people wanting to try and get ahead of the curve, or wanting to play it first. Whether it be for content creation or just personal interest. But because you don't pay the extra premium for the special edition or whatever, it's like, oh, too bad, you've got to wait more days. And if it's for the highest version, that's even worse. If you're going to do it, only make it like, you know, the next version up, not the ultimate legendary edition or whatever. So it's like $120. Yeah, that's not worth it as far as I'm concerned. I would wait for the extra days on principle, because that's just... At least I would, because I just don't agree with that personally. Ultimately, I'm not going to stop you, nor anyone else. The reason why they keep doing it is because it keeps working. It's just, it's really not my thing. The only time I will actually get a game early is if it's a game I really love that I was already planning to get the better version of anyway, you know? Then it's just coincidental. But actually choosing to get a more expensive version of the game just because I can get the early access, I'm like, never. Probably can't wait right as well, because you're getting the special edition of that's like too expensive. I mean, that's fair enough, dude. If you love those kind of games and you want to get them, you have to pick which one you want to get and which one you want to spend the extra money on. Well, obviously, they wouldn't charge over twice the price for just early access. It comes with all sorts of other features or season passes or cosmetics or whatever. I gathered that much. It's just the fact that that's a part of that version is just what kind of ticks me off. But I'm getting off track. I need to finish this story.
You put your life in someone else's hands for a deadly battle? I don't know how to feel about that. You will see half-assed disappointment. I guess this time I'll say I lost because I didn't see this much disappointment coming. The end.
Mukuro shook her head at Monokuma. No, you're wrong, Junko. Huh? If you want to talk about winning or losing, I think we lost before we even started. Mukuro's eyes shifted from side to side, as she was unsure of something, and still fidgeting in place as she continued to talk. No matter how much despair they felt, you didn't think they'd kill each other the way they were before. That's why you erased their memories. They aren't like the others you forced in the past. You knew these students would never do it. That's what you wanted to believe, isn't it? Trophy edit. Yeah, the faction system, anytime I've heard anyone talk about it, it just sounds like boring grind. What are you talking about? So, it's okay, Junko. I'll bring everyone's memories someday, and I'll show you everyone's happiness and their bonds. I'll show all to you, and fill you with even more despair. Mukuro nodded after she said this, as if to cheer her sister up. After several seconds of silence, Monokuma responded, You finally beat me this one time, and that lame speech is the best you can do? You're such a disappointment! You'll never fill me with despair. You're just constant disappointment. After pouting like a sore loser, Monokuma continued to speak in his usual tone. But you guys will be back. And when that time comes, I'll invite you guys to a wonderful place. And here's the other reason. I know I'm going off drag again. I know, like, we were so consistent for 2 hours, and now here I am, like, breaking up the story so much. Here's the reason why I wanted to continue If, because Junko's still alive in it. So they could literally have, like, a sister versus sibling dynamic going on with Mukuro and Junko. This highlights all the game's weaknesses too, yeah. I found out all about this fun island while I was running things here. Also, it alluding to the fact that this version of Junko is just going to go straight to Jabberwock. Now, because of this. Monokuma's laughter filled the room before the static finally cut out, and his remains fell silent. He wouldn't be talking again anytime soon. The mastermind was already preparing a new despair to bring to the world and to the students of Hope's Peak Academy, Junko included. In the end, the mastermind stayed in her Monokuma persona until the very end, and Junko Enoshima never showed her face again. It was all as if she resented the despair Mukuro had given her. That thought almost filled Mukuro with despair, but when she heard her classmates calling for her, she stilled that despair into the depths of her heart. From now on, she would seal away all her despair. And one day, when she can give Junko the perfect despair, she'll unleash all the despair of despair she stored and plunged with her sister into a dark abyss. I won't leave my sister alone. In the end, that was the first hope the disappointing older sister had felt since she was a child. Several hours later at the main entrance. Mukuro, you really going to go out wearing that wig? After receiving a blood transfusion of the correct blood type, Makoto was beginning to show signs of recovering. Yeah, they're all going to wear that wig because the artist didn't want to draw Mukuro with the short black hair. So they just reused the old artwork. Mukuro, holding her wig to disguise herself as Junko Enoshima, nodded. If I live as Junko, I'm able to understand her better. Despite that, Makuro's voice still sounded like her own, as if she hadn't fully decided. And I've made up my mind. While I'm out there, I've decided I'll accept everyone's hatred towards me, and towards Junko. I can't die until I've destroyed all the despair that Junko has spread. The damage that ultimate despair inflicted upon the world could not be measured in terms of money, culture, or even human life. Television broadcasts had already begun informing people that Junko Enoshima and Mukuro Ikusaba were the heart of the ultimate despair. Among the survivors in the outside world, there are still people who hadn't been tainted by despair yet. Regardless of the fact that she released Makoto and the others, to these survivors she was nothing more than the reason the world ended. And the terrorists wearing Monokuma's masks who continued to ravage the world, Mukuro was nothing but a traitor. But she was now in the hopeless situation of being enemies with most of humanity. But Mukuro wasn't making a deal out of it. I'm going to try, not to kill anyone who comes after me for revenge. Wouldn't it be safer to just turn yourself in? Wondered Yasuhiro. Well, you might just get executed instead. But you could live to be an old lady if your trial keeps getting pushed back. Mukuro slowly shook her head at Yasuhiro. Laws, justice, these things no longer exist. Is it really that bad out there? Maybe we should just stay here. Byakuya glared at Yasuhiro with contempt. Ignorant idiots should just shut up. Your fate won't change whether you stay in here or not. I'm trying to think, was there any character that actually said nothing? No, everyone at least said something. I was like counting through all the heads. Every character at least said something. Some of them more than others. Though he was shocked to learn that Tagami Corporation had been destroyed, Byakuya continued to remain firm and proud, even toward Mukuro. You are a rare asset, continued Byakuya, so I won't let you live for now. So I'll let you live for now. I thought he was about to say you won't let you live it down. Depending on your actions, I may consider forgiving your crimes after I've built a new world. Only a Tagami would boast that they're capable of forgiving the crime of ending the world. You don't need to do that. I don't plan on just surviving. After turning away from Byakuya, Mukuro looked at the other students. Everyone was reacting in their own way. Kyoko had a look of quiet preparation. Toko, having just changed back from Genocide Jack, was panicked and confused. Mukuro looked back on the 2 years she spent with them, and turned to Makoto, who shared the same memories as her, and gave him the escape button. Makoto, you press it. Me? I think it's better if you press it instead of me. As she watched Makoto accept the button with some hesitation, Mukuro thought about what Monokuma had said. You guys will be back. Mukuro knew that Monokuma was telling the truth. After all, the file the students needed to fully restore their lost memories remained hidden in the academy. The research notes of Yasuke Matsuda, the ultimate neurologist, another Danganronpa character. His research is the key to restoring everyone's memories. Even if the students no longer have their memories, they may be able to repair the bonds they had built among themselves over the past 2 years. But as long as their memories remain unrestored, the mastermind could still repeat her deadly plan. Also, if you want to scare the shit out of yourself, look up the Danganronpa Zero cast and find, like, I can't remember what his fucking name is, but there's one character and you spot it and you go, what the fuck is that? And it's like this 8-foot tall dude with a tongue that goes down to his, like, hip. With, like, dark black hair, like a super big long black suit. His body is irregularly shaped, and he's one of the ultimates. And you're like, what? And you're like, what is this freak abomination of man? And he's so terrifying. Anyway, restored, the mastermind could still repeat her deadly plan. Although the island mentioned earlier sounded strange, the students could not turn their backs on the despair facing them. Then let's go. Makoto remembered everything that was happening in the outside world. The boy who had chosen to remain inside the academy 2 years ago was now choosing to leave. How much did he struggle to come to that decision? But he was determined to face the despair awaiting him outside, and hid his internal conflict from the others. By protecting Makoto's hope, Mukuro would bring despair to her beloved sister. But she no longer knew if the end result for her goal would lead to hope or despair. She pulled the wig over her head and hid her face with her hands. She was smiling because hope was waiting for her, or was she crying because her path would lead to despair? When she lowered her hands, her face was devoid of all emotion. Mukuro no longer knew what expression she would wear on her face. At the same time, Makoto pressed the escape button. Her siren began to wail as the turrets reacted to the ceiling. From beyond the heavy door, a bright light appeared. An infinite number of ifs, and all the possibilities contained therein, encased the world. Accepting everything, hope, despair, and even the feeling of that disappointing girl, Mukuro Ikasaba. And it just ends, that's it. That is Danganronpa if. The what if things went differently. And I still to this day wish they did more of it. And I was going to mention it earlier, but I ended up getting sidetracked. I wish they would do what Atlus did. Because Atlus, if some of you may not know this, Persona is a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei. It's not just its own thing like a lot of people seem to treat it as. It's a spin-off that came about by them continuing off of a what-if timeline. They had a game called Shin Megami Tensei If, and it was a similar deal. It took the events of the original Shin Megami Tensei, but said, what if X, Y, and Z happened slightly different? How would it affect the entire rest of that story? If directly leads into Persona 1. And then Persona 2 onwards. Capcom did it as well? Yeah. I can't remember what franchise it was, but yeah, they have. I really wish Spike would do it too. That Spike Chunsoft would do it too. Or whatever the team it is that makes this game. I think it's Spike Chunsoft. I know that the director is kind of done. I mean, yeah, but it was less that DMC was based off a what-if of Resident Evil. It was more that Devil May Cry was a prototype of Resident Evil that fell through, and then they just made it its own thing. So it's not quite the same. I get what you're getting at, but it's not quite the same. It's not like a deliberate, we made a what-if storyline and then continued it. Devil May Cry is very much, it was originally going to be one thing, but then when it didn't work out to be that thing, they just made it into something else using the same pieces. But I get what you're saying, like it's similar in that sense, where they took something else and then just kind of let it do its own thing and carry on. But I genuinely love If, and I wish it continued into a proper story. And like, even if the main director of the series isn't involved, I've said it before, and I've said it countless times, I would genuinely love to see Danganronpa material directed by someone other than the original director. And that's not saying I have problems with, you know, like the director and his writing style and whatnot, but it's very clear in V3 he doesn't want Danganronpa, or doesn't want to be involved with Danganronpa forever. And I genuinely think fresh perspectives would be a blessing to this franchise. Whether it be a Danganronpa 4 or an actual proper If game, I would genuinely love more continuation of If. And because, yeah, If is too short. I say that, I thought it was way shorter. We managed to kill about 3 hours. You don't get to see what happens next because it's just a what-if story. Like If, yeah. But I genuinely love it. But that's all I really wanted to cover. Since I'm not going to do Caligula today because it ended up taking longer, I will quickly load my other save file and very briefly show the last minigame. What's the volume settings like? Okay, I still like that. The island mode, is just free play mode, basically. That's only because of DDoS. Yeah, well, the last minigame and feature is Magical Miracle Girl. Throughout the course of the game, there's giant robots blocking off each of the islands in the main game, right? And Monami defeats each one. Miracle Girl is showing what happens by making you play a minigame. And it's literally, you get equipment, you boost your stats, you go into an arena, and you go fight enemies. And each stage has a different layout and setup. Like, do I remember the controls? Okay, yes. And this is literally how it works. You go around drawing circles around enemies without getting hit. All these things are going to die in like one hit because I'm like super kitted out on stats. But you literally just do this mini game. There's 3 trophies tied to it. Beat it on hard, and get every single equipment piece. Which you get equipment at random via drops. And every now and then you can see in the bottom left, you fill up a bar, and that bar is your super meter. What's the control? Oh, it doesn't tell you. And your super will make you invincible for a set amount of time. The bigger the circle you make, or the bigger the shape you make with it, will affect what actually is spawned. And you literally just do this for like 7 stages, and you just do them on a loop. But each stage plays a different track. Has a different boss at the end of it. That one's got that theme. Secret, I think, just plays... Yeah, Secret's in the glitch land, and you fight Monokuma at the end of it. The end where there's no end. You know, from chapter 6. And enemies are way more dangerous in here, so you have to be more careful. Oh, see, I got hit already. Oh, shit. And that's the general idea. As in, as you play through it, you pick up more equipment. You can pick up all of these, boosting the stats. The stats power, the magic power is how long your like magic drawing can be for the circle. Strength, damage, defense, damage you take. Usumi is how good the special is when you use it. Yeah, all ones to transform, and then there you go, and then you can just do that. Also, you can at the press of a button, you can change the language. If you for some reason want Japanese Monomi just for those little bits. But that'll be it. That's okay. Now it's for real. The actual ending of my Danganronpa revisit. If I ever come back to Dangan, it'll be either with UGG gets remastered, which would be nice, but we'll see. Or if the franchise actually continues, which who knows when or if that will happen. I've said it before, but honestly, I don't think they need to rush into a Danganronpa 4. I'd rather them do creative and different spin-offs. Or do, like, as a motorbike passes by, separating paths. Like I mentioned a minute ago, like I'd love If to continue. I'd love for them to do a continuation of If and push off of it. I like how, because I like how the description says light novel Danganronpa F written by that amazing writer. Because it's not written by anyone on the Dangan team. It was written by an outsource. I can't remember who it is, but it is someone that's actually pretty damn cool, if I recall. Let's see, V3. The thing with V3 is that the whole message of V3 is that the director was trying to get across is that he didn't want the series to go on indefinitely. That was the whole, like, right from the start, everything's about, oh, we're doing this again, oh, things always seem to be happening this way. And the whole main message of the Mastermind is that everything's planned out to such an extent, it will always happen the way you expect it to. To such an extent, V3, the plot twist is in its title, V3. It's not the third killing game, it's the 53rd killing game. Because it's just happened so many times, and it's always Junko's the Mastermind, it's always these things happens in this order. He's trying to get the point across that he doesn't want Danganronpa to just go on forever. But he didn't mean that as it to be the final game, though. He was just saying he was just trying to basically tell people, hey, look, you really don't want these favorite franchises of yours to just keep on going because they might end up becoming repetitive or dumb or just not as good. That was the message he was going for. His execution, debatable, but that was what he was going for. The audience doing music and who's going, yeah. But he's also very open to doing another game. It's just not yet. He wants to do other things first. He wants to do other things and then later on go to it. and Spike Chunsoft, and he said Chun Spikesoft, have said over the years that they're more than willing to just do spin-offs whilst the director goes do what he wants to do. Rather, I read it wrong. No, it's not finale, it's more he's trying to make a point that he just doesn't want it to go on forever. And they're not hand in hand. The biggest thing with V3, though, is that the director himself has officially stated it is not canon to the original storyline at all. And that's the biggest thing that literally allows a potential fourth game to exist, if they ever do one. Because V3 ends with not only the main character stopping the killing game, but stopping the general public from wanting more killing games. So there's no desire or interest in it, so Junkos or the followers of, or anyone who's in like a follow-up killer or whatever, have no reason to continue doing it. However, V3 also makes the cardinal sin of having its plot twist try to make out that the entire Danganronpa franchise isn't real and instead a TV show made up within the context of its own world. Which is where a lot of people got pissed off, myself included, because they invalidate a lot of what 1 and 2 actually means by doing that. Which is also the biggest reason why V3 was eventually decanonized. I know, like, the director said it was never intended to be canon, but it felt like the fact that he waited for it to come out first, waited for people to play it, then told people it wasn't canon, some of it felt like he was a response to backlash, but we'll see. Because people weren't happy that they basically, decanonized the events of the first 2 games and made out none of it was real. Uncanny Finale would also be fine with me. Yeah, also, I'm in the mindset of I will take whatever. If Danganronpa doesn't continue, I like the run it had, and I enjoy the games for what they are. I have problems with everything after UDG, like I said. Both Danganronpa 3 and V3, I think, just don't hold the quality the rest of the series did at all. It got out of hand, got way too crazy, way too embedded in its own lore and story and, like, conundrums that it just got a bit stupid. But I still enjoy the entire package collection that was the Danganronpa franchise, you know? But equally, if it does continue, and there's some genuinely unique ideas, whether it be through spin-offs or main titles, I would equally welcome it. I'm in that middle point with this. But it's like, if this is the end, it was a fun, good year. It was a fun series to go through. It was a fun series to discover last year, and I'm glad I experienced it. But if it's not the end, I look forward to seeing whatever happens next, you know? Man, it's myself. I do V3 as a finale. Yeah, and some people do. Some people are more than happy with V3 being the end because of the message. That they said he didn't want the series to go on forever. So ending it on the game that literally is trying to tell you he doesn't want Danganronpa to just go on indefinitely. He doesn't want to have there be like a Danganronpa 9 or 10 later down the line, basically. Makes sense. Equally, I said, there's a lot of like untold mysteries, a lot of things unanswered, a lot of little things that are just kind of they could do more with. And there's obviously a lot of potential for the franchise with how many unique characters there are, you know? There's so many unique and different characters that if Spike want to do spin-offs or want to do different things with some of these characters, go for it. Look at Neps, how much of a mess that is. Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah, but either way, I've rambled on enough. But that's basically the general gist. I said, Danganronpa is a franchise I'm very glad I experienced, and I very much hold it near and dear to my heart, with Danganronpa 2 and UDG being at the pinnacle of it, with 1 and If being just slightly under them, and then V3 and 3 at the lower down. Those have a shelf life. Yeah, and I can appreciate that. No, I'll miss him. Yeah. Well, if you want to see more of him, he's in UDG. I think that's just a sign. Both of my 2 favourite Danganronpa games are the 2 that happen to have Nagato in it. But I digress. Hopefully one day that remaster that I keep on praying for UDG will actually happen. And it will come to PS5 and it won't have any recording restrictions or whatever. And I will get to come back to it and show you guys why I love that game as well. Despite how different it is and how weird it is in a lot of ways, because holy shit, that game can be weird at points. And hey, maybe even one day they might even like make a proper PS5 port of V3, and then I will experience that game again. I think that's the thing. Going back to 1 and 2 has only served to highlight the problems I have with V3 more for me. which is not good. like the more I think on it, the more I see what the other games do, the more I'm like, man, V3 was kind of rough. And that's, I have to stress again, that doesn't mean I think V3 is bad. It's just, holy shit, its problems are really loud. And there's a lot of them as well. But as always, I will wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for anyone who voted way back at the start of January for the Danganronpa revisit. I really enjoyed this revisit, and it helped me reappreciate some other things in the story, or notice details that I just didn't on my first run while I was still learning the series. And I had a blast here. So thank you for everyone that voted. Thank you for everyone that watched these streams. Remember to like and subscribe as always if you enjoyed what you see. My Twitter and Patreon can be found in the description of every video if you feel so inclined. I do hope this is not the last we see of Danganronpa, but if it happens to be, it was a really fun run, and I have a special place in my heart for it, not just because I enjoyed the series, but because it was the very first game I started this streaming path that I have been doing for the past year and a couple months now. You know? I was still recovering from COVID, January 2022. The first game I decided to stream was Danganronpa, because I'd never played anything in the series, I'd only heard about it, I went, sure, what if? And it set the path that led me to where I am right now, and so I'll always be grateful for that as well. The first one's always the most important one, after all. In the series, yeah. So even if you're not a big fan of the mechanics, because I know the mechanics aren't for everyone, like, Lord knows I don't like Hangman's Gambit, but the actual story and the characters, especially the characters, have always pulled me in as I've gone through and always kept me going, even in games like V3 where the story is kind of abysmal. The characters keep me there, even if I would say that, I only like about 5 of them. But that's besides the point, they're good. The 5 characters I like are, like, really well written, so it's just the other, like, 11 that are kind of bad. Yeah. But I digress, I've rambled on enough. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry you didn't get Caligula effect in today. Like I said, I honestly forgot how long If was. I thought it was shorter. Maybe a fanfic though, yeah. I would love to, if I ever got back in the mood to do fanfics, I'd love to try and do a continuation of If. And I know I'm not the first person to do that. If you look online for Dangan fanfics, there are a lot of people, because Danganronpa If meant a lot to a lot of people in its own way. A lot of people have tried to do their what if happened next, basically. But I would love to give that a shot one day. But that's ever if I'm in the mood for fanfics. Just right now, I'm so knee-deep in my own works with Demon of Xenelheim, planning out Bullet Kisser, or Kissing Bullets, depending which way round I decide to go for the title. And wanting to also kind of go back through the Mary Skelter trilogy to clean up a few things. PlayStation on my stream. Yeah, after this I'm going to get some food and get ready for work, so that's why I haven't been catching most of your streams recently, One Man. It's because my work schedule has been hyper busy, so when I'm not streaming I'm usually just getting ready. I haven't even been able to have much time to edit my book as of late. All of my work shifts are 6 PM onwards. And it's like every day but Wednesday, or every day but Thursday, depending on the week. Oh, and Sunday, ignoring yesterday. Because yesterday was stock check, so I had to go in. But, yeah, we'll see. I don't know how long that's going to last, though. Basically, the only reason I've got those hours just lasting before I vanish is because one of the managers basically asked me to extra hours, and I just went, look, any week you can get away with, go all in. Just give me late in the evening so I can get stuff in the day. Because I want to try and rack up some money to have something in my back pocket, you know? Because also I want to be able to move on and do different things in my life, because I've been working in a fucking supermarket for 6 years now. I want to be able to do more in my life, but I can't do that on just the bare minimum. So it's kind of like grind it out, get some money together, get some things together, and see where I can take that, or go somewhere else to another job, if so be it, or whatever. And then figure it out from there. But it's just obviously I need to do that grind. So at least for like the next month, it is going to be... I'll probably be quite tired for some of the streams, but I'll figure that out in the schedule. If I know I'm going to be more tired or struggle more, I'll do what I'm doing this week, where I'm taking 2 days off instead of just 1. You're changing there, yeah. And as I said, I've only got my schedule for like the following month, so it could all change by April and be back to my normal hours. And if that's the case, I'll just take that month as the bonus it is, if that makes sense, you know? I'll take it for what it is and then just go back to the search and go back to whatever it needs to be. But one thing at a time. But I've rambled on enough. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.